this council meeting to order. A few minutes ago, from 6 o'clock to 6:30, we had a mock council debate, and it was students from ages 10 to 12, and they were chosen from submissions that they had made for this evening, and in other words, what they would like Kitchener to be. And so we had a half hour in which those students entered into debate, and as I said at the end of that process, they certainly did well. They were thinking on their feet, and I know that our community is in good hands for the generation after the generation that is around the table right now. So I would invite everyone to begin this meeting by singing or having our national anthem. Victoria Whiteman of King's School of Vocal is here to lead us.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Et savaleur de foi trempée, protégeront nos foyers et nos doigts. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I remember many years ago when you were singing for us the first while, and you certainly have become a wonderful singer and a fine young lady. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you to Sue as well. It's been moved by Councillor Rabanovich that the minutes of the regular meeting held on April the 14th, 2014, and special meetings held April 14 and 28, as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors, be accepted. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest on items to be dealt with this evening? Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, I have a pecuniary interest on in the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee on item number 4, as I own property.
Item number 4, okay. Thank you. We now have a couple of presentations, and I will move to the other podium to recognize a few people. Is Brian Bennett here? We have a number of presentations to make, or recognitions to make. Unfortunately, not many are able to be with us this evening. But the first is the Certificate of Service, and they are Jennifer Ball, for working on the Kitchener Public Library Board of Directors from 2009 to 2013. David Sterrett, also KPL, from 2009 to 2013. Aaron McFarlane on the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee from 2012 to 2013, and also the Downtown Advisory Committee for 2010 to 2012. Steve Crossman, the Environmental Committee, 2010-2013. and James Howe on Compass Kitchener from 2010-2013, as well as Brian Bennett, Economic Development Advisory Committee, 2009-2013. And that was prior to him becoming a member of our staff in the Economic Development Department. Likewise, we have an award of merit. There were two people who, unfortunately, who are not able to be with us tonight. Tim Jackson, who was on the Center of the Square Board of Directors from 2005 to 2013. David Strug, Center in the Square Board of Directors, 2006 to 2013. And we're pleased tonight to have Ina de Jong, who will be accepting on behalf of her late husband, Mark Peterson, who served on our Environmental Committee and Heritage Committee from 2006 to 2013. Ina, please come down. The second presentation that we have this evening is from Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro and Kitchener Power Corp. Jerry Van Utegem, who is President and CEO, and Mark Jackson, Chair of the Board. If they would come forward. And as a presentation, they have 10 minutes to make that presentation. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you for having us. As His Worship said, my name is Mark Jackson, the incoming Chair of the Board of Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro Inc., and with me is Jerry Van Utegem, President and CEO. You'll be hearing more from him shortly. He's got the real details. I'm just kind of the warm-up man. We're very pleased to be present here tonight to present the 2013 annual report of the operations of Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro Inc. 2013 marks the 13th full year of operations for the corporation since it was incorporated in 2000. It will also be remembered as the year of the storms, with 4 major events occurring. 2 ice storms in April and December, and 2 back-to-back windstorms in July. The staff of Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro did yeoman's duty in restoring power to all customers for each of these events under very difficult circumstances. And we are indeed fortunate to have such a dedicated and talented workforce. Beyond these storms and the regular operations of 2013, 2013 was made even busier, as this was the year that we prepared and filed a major cost of service application to the Ontario Energy Board. For those of you who are familiar with this laborious process, you will know that this is no small task. After months of preparation, our rate application was filed with the OEB and scrutinized for many more months. We were pleased to receive approval of the rate application in March of 2014, and will be setting new rates going forward based upon this approved plan. This rate application, again, could not have been accomplished without the considerable efforts of staff throughout the organization. Overall, we are pleased with the operations of the corporation in 2013 and continue to look for new ways to improve customer service and communication, manage our risks, and deliver value to you, our shareholders, all within a rapidly changing and highly regulated environment. I have purposely resisted getting into too much detail relating to our 2013 operations, as I don't want to steal Jerry's thunder too much. I would just like to thank the City of Kitchener for your ongoing support of the board and management, and we hope to continue to earn that trust on a going forward basis. Our President and CEO, Jerry Van Utegem, will now provide you with just a little bit more color of the operations throughout 2013. And then we'll be here to answer questions. And after that, we'd like to make a presentation to Your Worship.
Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. His Worship, Mayor Zarek, councillors, senior staff, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure once again to present to you this evening the 2013 annual report for Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. I would like to begin with some statistics for 2013. We added 994 new customers during the year, which equates to a growth rate of 1.1%. This compares to 1.2% for 2012. The number of new customers added has been declining each year since 2009. Kilowatt-hour consumption decreased slightly in 2013 by 0.68% compared to a decrease of 0.42% for the province. Average kilowatt-hour consumption per residential customer has decreased by 5% since 2010. As you know, kilowatt-hour sales are influenced primarily by four factors: the weather, growth, the economy, and conservation. Kitchener-Willmott Hydro's system peak demand occurred on July 17th last year and was a 3 megawatt decrease from the previous year. This equates to 0.8% decrease and compares to a 2% decrease for the province. I believe this reflects some of the conservation efforts of our customers to reduce their consumption during peak periods. Now I would like to speak to you a little bit about our financial performance. Total revenue for the year was $228.9 million. Electric energy services, which are third-party charges billed by Kitchener-Willmott Hydro on behalf of other electricity market participants, account for $187.4 million, or 81.9% of the total. Distribution services makes up 16.7% of the total revenue collected, and this is the amount available to Kitchener-Willmott Hydro to operate its business. The remaining 1.4% of revenue is made up of energy conservation funding received from the Ontario Power Authority for delivery of CDM programs and other miscellaneous income. As shown, distribution revenue for the year was $38.2 million. This is a decrease of $2.7 million from 2012, when distribution revenue was $40.9 million. This is primarily due to regulatory adjustments that were made in 2012 for smart meters. Kilowatt-hour consumption and peak demand were also lower, as mentioned, which also reduced revenue. Residential rates for an average customer using 800 kilowatt-hours per month are $118.61, effective November 1, 2013. KW Hydro's portion for distribution charges is $25.50, or 21% of the total bill. The remainder of the bill is for energy and other third-party charges. Residential rates will be going down slightly for a typical residential customer effective May 1, 2014, due to a decrease in Kitchener-Willmott Hydro's distribution rates for two reasons, primarily due to a one-time regulatory adjustment for changes in accounting standards and a small decrease in core rates. This is despite an increase of $2.83 per month in energy charges that was announced by the Ontario Energy Board for May 1. These regulatory adjustments, however, will end on December 31st. So how do our distribution rates compare to that of other local distribution companies? This chart, which is published by the Ontario Energy Board, shows the average distribution revenue, annual distribution revenue per residential customer using 800 kilowatt hours a month. As you can see, in 2013, customers of Kitchener-Willmott Hydro continue to benefit from lower residential rates than most customers in the province. In fact, KW Hydro had the 14th lowest rates of 74 LDCs in the province in 2013. Total expenses for the year were $220.6 million. The largest expense, as you can see, was for energy services, which was a pass-through, as previously mentioned. Operating expenses, or controllable costs, were $16.4 million in 2013, the same as the previous year. Amortization, taxes, interest payments, and energy conservation make up the remaining expenses of $33.1 million. As mentioned, our OM&A, or controllable costs, for 2013 were $16.4 million. This equates to $181.91 per customer, which is the blue bar on the right, or a 1.3% decrease from the previous year. It was also 4.9% below the approved budget for 2013. In 2013, Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro's controllable costs were 41% lower than the 2012 provincial average of $309. Strong cost control allowed Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro to keep its controllable expenses below both the 2013 budget and forecast. As mentioned by the Chair, 4 major storms in Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro service territory occurred in 2013, and it applied pressure on our controllable costs. The total cost of the 4 storms in 2013 was approximately $1.1 million, of which $400,000 was capitalized. The remaining $700,000 is included in our controllable costs. In a normal year, we would expect to spend about $200,000 a year in storm repairs. Nevertheless, a decision was made to not apply for a rate increase in 2014 to recover these incremental storm costs, as Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro was able to shift its priorities throughout the year to pay for the repairs and storm cleanup costs within its budget. Here's a comparison of the controllable costs per customer per year. Again, you can see that we compare very favorably to other LDCs, and we have the 3rd lowest in the province. Net income for the year was $8.3 million, which is a slight decrease from the year before, and that's to be expected since it's the 4th year in our rate-making cycle. Capital investments in new plant and equipment amounted to $20.2 million, which is $500,000 less than the year before, and they were financed all through internally generated funds. I would like to finish with a review of a few customer service performance indices, and I'll start with a slide that shows the profiles of the 4 major storms that we had in 2013. Across the bottom is the duration of the outages, and along the side is the number of customers affected by the outages. As you can see, the December 22nd ice storm, which is the purple line, affected the largest number of customers by far and cost $456,000 in repairs. The smallest storm in terms of customers impacted was the April ice storm. But even with that, the costs almost equated to those of the December ice storm at $392,000. The April ice storm, we had to replace 27 broken poles, while only 3 broken poles occurred in December. So each storm has its own identity and challenges. These are the reliability indices that we track each year in terms of duration and frequency of outages, with the 2 major storms excluded, July and December's storm. And that's so that you can do year-over-year comparisons without anomalies. So it compared pretty well when you exclude them, but when you include the 2 major storms, the numbers look very different. In fact, from top to bottom, they changed to 418 minutes, 2.19 outages, and 191 minutes, so quite a change. Service quality performance metrics these are some of the ones that we track. Again, we've exceeded the standard in all areas. In fact, there was a slight improvement in our telephone response. In terms of community initiatives, we again deliver the safety presentations to students. We are now sponsors of 2 student awards at Conestoga College as well. We continue to support the arts and culture community with our Electric Thursday sponsorship, and we also provided tree reforestation grants last year. Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro is well on its way to meeting its CDM targets, especially with respect to energy savings. As of the end of 2013, we are about 93% of our target. Demand target is only about 51%, and we will not get there, as will very few in the province. And that completes my presentation for the 2013 annual report. In summary, I too would like to thank our Board of Directors and all of our staff for a very challenging 2013. Our staff worked tirelessly to restore power during several major storms and to submit the cost of service application that our Chair mentioned. And I would also like to thank all of our customers who are affected by power outages for their patience while we worked around the clock. It was certainly a year to remember. Now, before I take questions, there are a couple of presentations that I will ask our Chair to come forward and make. Thank you very much.
Your Worship, I wonder if you could come here and I could present, is it Dan we're presenting to? Okay, Dan. We have two checks to present tonight. One is consistent with Jerry's community initiatives, and one is for $40,000 for a tree reforestation grant. And the other one, consistent with our dividend policy, is the issuance of the 2013 dividend. So, thank you very much.
And maybe you could say what the amount is.
$3,071,000.
$3,071,000. Thank you. Okay, there are several questions. Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for that nice check. It helps every year considerably. Two or three questions that I have. I noticed, and you may have answered this, that the number of customers increased by 1.1%, and yet our consumption went down by 0.5%. Does that mean that people are using less, or would there be other reasons for that?
No, I think that would be a big reason why. We are noticing each year that the average consumption per customer is going down, and I think conservation plays a big part in that.
Just noticing the peak demand. The peak demand decreased from 379 to 370. What does that mean? How does that impact us?
It's the maximum amount of power that's used at one point in time, which happened to be July 17th in 2013. So it's the cumulative total of all customers, the maximum energy usage. What that means is that, of course, the generators, you need to be able to ramp up enough generation supply to meet that maximum demand, even though it's only maybe for an hour, a month. You still need those available generation resources. So whatever we can do to suppress that peak demand is a cost savings for the province, certainly.
What kind of peak demand can we handle?
We're fortunate that we have built a very robust infrastructure, and we can, we believe we can supply the peak demand for the city for a number of years in the future. But again, we're building our facilities to manage that maximum peak demand, and we do forecast 10 years out to make sure that we have enough available supply for that.
On the one page, it's page 6 on here, you show the controllable costs per customer, and it's at $191 this year. It's less than last year. Does that include the money for the storms?
Yes, it does include the $700,000 for the storms that went to controllable costs. It also includes the operating and maintenance costs for our transformer stations of $17.25 a customer, which is not incurred by many other LDCs in the province.
Just a couple of other questions to help me with some other things that we're discussing with our other utility. How does Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro purchase the electricity that they sell to our customers? Do they purchase it on the market rate, which changes daily, or?
Yes, Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro purchases its power from the Independent Electricity System Operator, and it is an hourly price that we pay for the energy that's used by our customers. So our bill is made up of an hour-by-hour price.
Okay. Just one final question, and the worst thing I noticed about the financial statements was that our cash flow had eroded somewhat. And on investigating, I find that we have considerable dollars tied up in gas that we've sold that we haven't collected for yet, or electricity.
Yes.
Is there any thought? Have you ever considered going to a monthly billing, the same as all our other billings, all our water and gas and billings? Most other things, our telephone, TV, our credit cards are all billed on a monthly basis. Have you considered that as an option for the future?
Very much so. It's a very timely question. We did apply in our 2014 cost of service rate application that the chair mentioned to cover costs to go to monthly billing. And so we were waiting for that decision to know whether or not, in fact, we would get kept whole for that, because certainly, as you know, postage costs are going up significantly this year. So we were successful in that, so we'll be moving forward to look at the business case now for moving to monthly billing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Jerry, for coming in, and Mark. Some really good results from the overall with low costs for our customers. One of the questions that you did touch upon, and I'm glad you did elaborate a little bit about the storms and that. But I don't think the enormity of the storms in particular were conveyed, I guess, to the public in a way. And in particular, just the December 22nd and 23rd storm. Would that be considered one of the worst storms KW Hydro ever experienced for a power outage?
Certainly in my tenure, and I've been with Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro for over 33 years now, and we have not had a storm where we had power out for that long, of that magnitude. And I would say in two cases, the July storm was very severe, as well as the December ice storm. And for damage, the April storm in Wilmot Township was extreme, with 27 broken poles. I don't remember another storm with that many broken poles either. So, it really was an unusual year last year.
So, yeah, I think some congratulations is in order for staff and for the hard work that they've done with that, because realizing it was a challenging year. The other question that kind of relates to that is, I know there were some criticisms about Hydro not being able to convey the messages during the storm. What has KW Hydro done to improve that situation?
Yeah, so it was identified as a priority for us that we need to do more with respect to customer communications. So since the end of last year, and again, it was part of our rate application, or our plan to move forward, was to have a communications specialist, hire someone on staff whose primary responsibility was to do customer communications. We have now done that as well. We've also implemented a social media presence now on Twitter as well, just very recently, this past week or so. And so we're moving forward with that as well. And the really big initiative, I think, for us to make a really big difference in customer communications is in the technology of an outage management system. So it's a software-based system that will post to a website outage areas as they occur, without any need for manual posting of that information. And so in our budget for 2014, we also have monies available to investigate, to put out a request for proposals and procure such a system. And in fact, there was an IT person as well, that staff resource that we applied for to help us do that. And that person started work today, in fact. So that will be his first job.
Okay. Thanks, gentlemen.
Councillor Urbanovich.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Ioannidis asked much of the questions that I wanted to ask, particularly in the communication area. And I'm wondering, well, maybe just before I ask the question, I too want to thank Hydro for addressing the challenges, I think, that we needed to address as a result of those two storms. And I know there was a lot of appreciation in the community around that, particularly with the one around Christmas time. On the issue of communication, particularly in terms of utilizing social media and so on, do we feel that we now have the resources in place so that we will be able to actively engage with residents? Because I think that's really important, particularly when it comes to storms in the future.
Yeah, I think we have the available resources. I think we're still testing our processes and procedures, to be honest, that, that we're able to get the message out quickly enough to those who need to know. At this stage, it's still a manual process for us to notify certain individuals so that the information can be sent out or posted on our website. So we have an interim solution, I would say, until the technology solution becomes available. Certainly in an extreme storm like we have, those processes will be tested. I think for regular outages, I think I think we can learn from those and improve as we go along.
Okay, great. I certainly welcome that. I think, if there was sort of one thing I heard, I mean, everybody was really appreciative of all the staff, but it was that communication piece, and that I think will go a long way towards addressing the concerns that some members in our community had.
Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you, and thanks for the good news story. Of course, I'm always thrilled when money goes towards tree reforestation. Just two questions. I noticed that you said that there was a reduction in customers. Can you help me understand how there's a reduction in customers?
That's in the number of new customers added. So we added over 1,000 new customers in 2012. And only 994 new customers were added in 2013. So the growth rate is going down, actually.
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah.
okay. It's not that people
we're not
people are going off the grid, which I'm sure you don't
not
really
that
want.
We've noticed yet.
Not yet. Okay. And the other question was on page 5, when you talked about per residential customer per year, 800 kilowatts per month. Is that about the average that say, I don't want to be politically incorrect in saying an average family, because families make all different ages and groups.
Yeah, that's sort of the
average household?
Yeah, the benchmark that the Ontario Energy Board uses to compare apples to apples when they're going utility to utility. Our average usage is a little bit below 800 kilowatt hours actually in Kitchener, but for the province-wide, 800 kilowatt hours is used as the proxy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor Singh?
Yes, and thank you, gentlemen. And both Councillor Fernandez and I get very excited when anyone mentions money towards replanting. So it's just something that's coming later on as a report. So glad to see that there's additional monies that could be allocated for that as well. And through your presentation, you mentioned the controllable cost per customer. Obviously, it's has been trending. Still less than the budget, but it has been going up. With the more frequency of larger storms that are happening, is there more budgeting that's happening, or is there some aspect of concern that the corporation has as to mitigate and control those unforeseen costs?
I think we really haven't budgeted for a lot more than a typical year in this current budget in 2014. I don't believe that necessarily one year makes a trend, but it's something certainly that we're concerned about and that we will be monitoring it closely. I think it's certainly very important for us to maintain our tree trimming program, because in both storms, the ice storm and the windstorm, most of the damage was caused by falling branches, although you can never trim enough to trim back the size of the branches that came down. But for us, it's important that we continue maintaining our tree trimming cycle, and we're very focused on doing that this year.
And it's very good that you're pointing that out. And many of the trees that are on the boulevards are directly by the hydro lines as well, so they immediately affect, although those trees are on city property. So do you see or hope the city takes additional initiative in trimming those trees, which of course limits the cost to you guys when a storm event happens?
The challenge, of course, is that you need a certified arborist with high voltage experience to trim the trees below the high voltage wires. The city can trim once we've done our trimming to get them safely away from the high voltage wires. But that trimming really, falls on us to do.
Well, I hope that future plans could coincide with the city's work as well to limit costs to both corporations. And on page 7, where you outline net income, and you've pointed out, because it's the fourth year in rate setting, that there was a slight decline. Can you speak to that?
Yes, the assets that we invest in each year are not put into rate base until there's a major cost of service rate application. And that will happen once every 4 or 5 years. So even though we've invested lots of money in those assets, we're not earning a return on those assets, and that money doesn't come to us to use to manage our operation. So we have to wait until one of the major cost of service cycles when we're due for making, for claiming that revenue.
That helps to understand for the viewing audience as well. And the last point in question as well, and Councillor Gazzola picked up on this for billing rather than every 2 months, for it to be on a monthly basis, and of course it would help for your operation as well. But these are softwares that are very expensive for accounting and or billing softwares as an impact to the city as well, that we look at upgrading. Has there ever been looked at buying coinciding, licenses that could limit the cost to both corporations?
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess we have our own billing software, in-house billing software with our own programmer analysts. So any changes that are required to go to monthly billing from bi-monthly billing will be done in-house and are part of our OM&A costs. So we would not incur any third-party charges at this point. It is something, though, that we'll be looking at in the future when it is time to replace our CIS system.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that whenever we can look at an aspect of limiting costs to both, I think it's advisable, and thank you for both you gentlemen for being here today.
Thank you.
We now have all members of council with questions. Councillor Yanetsky.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in, and wish you congratulations on a job well done to get the power all restored for everybody. Challenges are there that you like to do it immediately and have everybody satisfied, but you have to do it one step at a time, and it takes time sometimes. But anyways, a quick comment. I still prefer bi-monthly billings, so that's my position on that. As a result of the storms, and a number of questions has been asked, and you've sort of answered them in regards to communicating with social media as a way. A lot of the residents in my neighborhood are seniors who aren't on social media, still rely on the old telephone and landlines, and operate that way. And I know you try your best to communicate, and if you don't have power, you can't turn your radio on unless you've got a battery, and you just sort of wait to hear what news is going to happen. And I know you're addressing that, and that's fine. But the question I have for you is that as a result of the storms that we've had, what have you learned from customer communication, that how should the customer be prepared for a storm and anticipate something? Usually you think, the power is out, there's something down the street, it'll be back in an hour or something. But here you have something that could be several days. What advice would you give to the homeowner?
Well, what we've learned from that, I think, is that in the future there'll probably be communications going out before the storm even hits. To let people know that they need to don't open your freezer, every 4 hours to check that things are still frozen, for example. Have arrangements in place for some place to go if the power's out at your house, because if it's a major storm, it could take more than 24 hours before power could be restored. There's all the other, opportunities as well, I guess, to be prepared to, to have water available if you need water. I'm fortunate that I'm part of the community emergency management plan. So, if warming centers need to be set up, that's something that would be communicated through that group as well. So there's some things people can do on their own. There's some things I think people just need to know that there's options out there for them, and they don't have to be sitting home in the cold alone.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I learned also from the storm, and I guess a lot of customers were maybe surprised and shocked, was that as a result of the damage that happened, the wires got pulled or broken, the poles on their house got bent and knocked out, and they thought, well, it's a city tree or a city hydro pole. They'll be their expense. Yet they find out that they have to repair the pole. It's all their expense. Is there something that's missing in this in terms of communication, or is this, I know it's sort of standard procedure, but there seems to be that lack of
Yeah.
knowledge.
I think those are the things that we need to communicate out, that the stack on the house is owned by the homeowner. If it's damaged, it's up to the homeowner to hire an electrician to make repairs. Electrical Safety Authority has some very good information on their website, and we'll be adding a link to our website. In fact, that there's a link there already, on what you need to know in the case of an emergency, whether it's a flood, whether it's a windstorm, whatever the case may be. But I do agree that I think we need to get more of that communications out in front of when the event happens, not during the event, when there's lots of other things going on. So that is part of our communications plan, is to let customers know they own the pole line on their laneway, or they own the stack that our wires attach to from the road. And I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, and I'll be brief, Mayor Zaire. Thank you, Jerry Marr, for coming in. On the finance side, I always look forward to your spring visits. So, just two quick questions. First of all, I think you went over it really quickly, but you said that, Jerry, that you could have applied for higher rates as a result of the storms, but you didn't. Why was that?
Yeah, so there's a threshold we have to meet to apply for recovery of incremental storm costs. And for us, that threshold is about $200,000. The reason we decided not to apply for that incremental rate rider is that we were successful, basically, in shifting enough work or delaying stuff to the following year to allow us to pay for those repair costs within our current budget. And so we didn't feel it would be appropriate as well to go out and ask for a rate rider to cover those costs if we could accommodate. Now, it did mean we had to put off some maintenance work, and we will be doing it this year, and it is part of our budget plan this year as well.
Okay, so despite the fact you were more than 3 times the threshold, your customers will not see any increased electricity rates as a result of unprecedented summer storms?
Not as a result of storm repairs.
Excellent, very good. Last question, and putting it out there a bit, but it's always seems like it's a bit of a mystery when you do come, I guess, from a regular council perspective in terms of the dividend. Can you make any general comments in terms of the predictability of the dividend going forward? Is there anything that we should be worried about, or do you anticipate stability?
I think, it is difficult to predict, and we've had a lot of sort of one-time regulatory adjustments in the last 2 to 3 years with the smart meter program coming in with our change in accounting standards, which changed our bottom line as well. So, forsaking any of those new extraordinary measures, hopefully our net income can be more predictable. We feel we're on a steady path in terms of upgrading and replacing our aging infrastructure. We don't have a real infrastructure deficit that we're trying to catch up with at all. And so if we can maintain our current level of expenditures and replacements with respect to our infrastructure, and we feel that we can have a stable future going forward.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate your presentation. I've had a number of people ask me about burying hydro lines, and with the storms we've had, I hope this is not true that it's the new normal, but I've understood from some climate action people that next year might see a 40% increase in ice storms because the weather is starting to hover around that freezing mark, and I hope that's not true. But is there a point past which you would start to consider, I understand the new subdivisions are burying their lines, yeah, but I would ask if there's any consideration being given to looking at that cost-benefit analysis of whether you would go back and start to look at burying some other lines rather than keep fixing the broken poles. Has that been a topic?
It's something that we do think about. It's just a very, very costly proposition. Typically, if you're replacing an existing overhead infrastructure with underground, depending on whether it's in a core area, whether it's three-phase or single-phase in a subdivision, the cost can be anywhere from 6 to 8 times the cost. to replace that overhead infrastructure with underground. And, I think there's a huge rate impact associated with that. Apart from that, of course, as well, is that there's changes that have to be made to every building to accept underground cables instead of overhead wires. And we've had a lot of experience with that on Halls Lane, and currently for some of the other work we're doing on Charles Street, where we put temporary overhead pole lines to replace the underground infrastructure and then bury it again. It's a very, very costly process. So I think the storm costs would have to go up exponentially before we'll be in that position.
Thanks for the answer and for considering it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, Jerry, I'll be quick as well. Thanks for coming in. I've always been convinced that Kitchener-Waterloo Hydro, Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, excuse that slip.
Get that right.
Is a golden goose that keeps laying those golden egg dividends. Could you just remind me recent dividends for the past few years?
For the past 2 years?
Past few years.
Oh, past few years? Well, our dividends are typically between, I would say, $3 and $4 million a year, and we've been pretty consistent with those dividends for the last several years.
Right.
And certainly, I think, the fact that we're an efficient operator really helps in our ability to deliver those dividends to the shareholder, and that's certainly our expectation moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chapman actually has the answer for that.
Through the Mayor, the answer was correct. For the past 5 years, they've ranged from $3 to $3.4 million. In 2009-2010, they were lower in the range of $1.7 to $1.9 million, but the interest rate we earned on the long-term debt was also higher in that point in time.
Thanks very much.
And I think that's a good point to make. There's a promissory note as well that the shareholder holds, and we do pay interest on that as well.
Great. Thanks.
Councillor Galway-Sealak, you have a question for staff?
I do.
Okay, any further questions for delegations? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Councillor Galway-Sealak.
I'll just quickly thank you as well. Everyone else did, so thanks to Jerry and Mark. My question is, I know that Councillor Davey and Councillor Etherington have kind of hammered away at this, but do we budget for the dividend?
Mr. Chapman.
Through the Chair, yes, we do. So in 2014, we're assuming that we'll receive a combined total of $6.2 million between the interest on the long-term debt and the dividend that was paid. We'll be slightly below that based on the dividend amount that was paid tonight. In our 2014 budget, we are assuming $5.4 million. About 20% of that goes to the operating budget. The balance of that goes to fund capital projects.
And do we determine what those projects are, or are we able to give direction of what those are on an annual basis or an ongoing basis?
The funding from Hydro forms part of the capital out of current pool, and so any project in the capital forecast is funded through taxes, gas dividends, or hydro dividends is funded from that same pool, so it would represent a change to your funding approach to give specific direction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that is all for that item. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now I'd like to insert one. I think that we have two people here, Harry Vogt and Dave McNeil from KW Oktoberfest. They're here just to answer any questions. I think we can deal with that one fairly quickly. This is Finance and Corporate Services, item number 5. Are there any questions on that item? This is related to the Glockenspiel. Seeing none, Councillor Davey, do you want to bring in that item?
Certainly. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Singh that item number 5, dealing with the Glockenspiel, be approved.
Okay. Any discussion on the item? Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now move to the back to the printed delegations. And this is related to the food truck issue. Nadia Grazanzu, sorry. Sorry, I put my glasses on would help.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Yes, I beg your pardon for
That's
mixing
okay.
up
It's
your name.
Dragasanu. It's hard to
Right.
pronounce. So just wanted to, just a couple of items, and it will be brief. At last council meeting, we heard a Toronto fee of $5,000. I just wanted to, I think it's fair for you to understand what the breakdown is when trying to consider what the Kitchener fee would likely be. So the Toronto food truck fee consists of over 400 locations in Toronto, and that includes about 58 locations in the entertainment district on private property. If you were to break down that number, 408 spots divided by 5,000, it would come up to about $14 a spot. So if you were to look at the number of spots we have in Kitchener, let's say a handful, or even 10 times 14, it would be well under the proposed $650 or even the $350. Also, with regards to including city events in the fee, I spoke to City of Waterloo, and they indicated that some city events are covered under the $330 that they're charging for a food truck fee. And that's pretty much all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Galloway-Seelot.
Yeah, just quickly, Nadia. So you're suggesting that at the City of Waterloo, there's some fees that are, or sorry, some events that are included in their fee. And what we see coming forward tonight is the $650 kind of all-in concept. Would you prefer a reduced license fee and then pay per event, or would you prefer an all-in fee?
I would prefer a reduced fee and then decide on which events we would participate in. Also, if you were to look at event fee, there were 16 proposed lunch services that would fall under one event, and then there are 2 to 3 additional city events. If you were to take an event fee, which is about $240, and divide that by, let's say, 10 food trucks, it would still come under the $650.
Okay, I think that we need a clarification from staff after we're done with that.
Yeah, when we get to the report, we certainly will.
I think even before, if we have any more food truck, I would request that we just get the clarification on that one point.
All right.
Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, there was another question for you, Nadia. I beg your pardon. Councillor Verbanovich.
Hi, and thanks for coming in tonight, Nadia. I guess I had a couple questions for you, because obviously we're dealing with a wide variety of issues that we're trying to factor in this. Would you say that the fee piece is sort of the number one issue from you as a food truck operator in terms of all the different things that we're talking about? Or, is it the issue of having sort of a daily location like's been discussed in terms of over by the center in the square? Like, if you had to sort of prioritize things, how would you prioritize them?
They're both important. The fee puts us in line with the other cities that we're close to, Hamilton and Waterloo. And because this is a pilot project, we understand that, locations, we will accept what we're provided with. Center in the square is important, but we understand that next year there will be a review and potentially more spots opened up.
And I'm not sure how much you're aware of this, because I think it's fairly a late-breaking development, but my understanding is Cambridge is now dealing with this issue tonight as well. Right. And I think some of the items are similar to what's in our bylaw. Some, like the fee, is still a different concept. How do you think sort of the addition of Cambridge now into this mix is going to either help or add to the food truck scene in the region?
So we just found out, you're correct, that Cambridge will be making a decision tonight as well. I believe their fees in line with Waterloo or close to it, and having the 3 cities all accept food trucks would simply mean that we're able to sustain our businesses and move around the cities.
Within the region, as opposed to necessarily having to go down to places like Hamilton or other places as often.
Right, exactly.
Okay, great, thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I guess when the time comes, since this was an item that was referred, I'd like to make a motion when the time comes.
I'll come back to that. Councillor Galloway-Sealock, your question of staff or whoever else is able to answer that question specifically.
Yeah, so I just want to understand specifically when we were talking about the fees, the event fees, and there was some talk about an event fee being $240 or $150, depending on what city you're looking at. Is that a per truck fee, or is that split amongst all of the food trucks?
Mr. Bloom, are you preparing to other way around? There we go. Okay. Mr. Bloom.
Through the mayor, so just to be crystal clear, there's 2 different fees that we're talking about. There's a special event licensing fee, and then there's a vendor fee. So the special event licensing fee is a fee that gets paid to our licensing division anytime there is any kind of special event where there is food being sold. So it's $244 regardless of whether you've got 1 food truck or 100 food trucks. Whether you've got 10 people or 10,000 people, it's $244 per special event. That's typically paid for by the event operator. So whether that be a third party like the Blues Festival or the ones that the city runs, typically that's either special events or downtown would cover that special event fee. The vendor fee is typically the fee that the special event operator would charge vendors, it's like a food truck, to be in attendance for those events. So it's in most cases it's up to the operator to determine what the vendor fee is. So the only place where there's a bit of a nuance is in the 3rd line and the 4th line, where it's so Downtown Live. So the regular Mondays at Civic Square. Typically, licensing would have charged $244 every single Monday, but realizing that there are certain trucks that come multiple times on a Monday, so they may come 2 or 3 times a summer, they made the interpretation of charging an event licensing fee of $244 per truck. So it would be charged per truck, whether the truck shows up for one Monday or 3 or 4 Mondays. It's one set fee. In terms of the various vendor fees, what we had suggested originally was based on the fee we were suggesting last week, that if you were to include these events into the fee, so looking at vendor fee A, that we would waive those vendor fees for their participation in those events. If not, if it was the other option of a reduced licensing fee and then they pay on top of it, what the right-hand column shows you is what we would suggest are normal rates for the types of events that we put on. So for major festivals that tend to draw thousands of people, it's pretty standard to charge somewhere between $200 and $300 per event. Typically per a one-day event, about a $300 charge would be fairly normal. For smaller events, like a Discovery Square or a Cinco de Mayo that we had today, typically our event operators, our staff, would use their discretion on what the fee should be. Some of those events, we know the food truck will actually lose money. They won't make money because there's simply not an attendance there, but the food truck does add significant value to the event, so they either provide no fee or a very reduced fee. So if there's any, hopefully that clarified. If not, happy to respond.
I think it still causes a little bit of confusion, but I think we'll come back. We're going to wait until we come forward with motion later on to clarify that. Can you just hold the rest of it in abeyance?
I can. Can we leave that up on the
leave
screen
that
while
screen
we
up.
have this discussion?
Okay. Nadia did have some new information. She was talking about Toronto. I failed to mention that at the beginning. What we're dealing with here tonight is new information because we've all gone around this circle a number of times. And so we have one more delegation, and then we will take a motion and deal only with the questions related to the motion itself. So, Ruben Salonga. Welcome, Ruben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, for inviting us over. I'd like to thank the City of Kitchener for inviting Luchador Gourmet Streetery to City Hall Courtyard, where we served our Mexi Fusion cuisine today. So thank you very much for those who did participate.
It was good. Thank
you, sir. We made that especially for you. Again, we represent United Food Trucks Unlimited, which is essentially 1112 food trucks operating out of the Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, Cambridge area. As Nadia mentioned earlier, today or tonight, Cambridge is voting on food truck legislation. The cost for food trucks to operate in Cambridge, the proposal fee is $264. A reminder for everyone, last week, Waterloo did, in fact, pass unanimously sustainable food truck legislation at the cost of $329. In comparison to Hamilton at $371, Guelph at $324, St. Catharines and Peel Regions at $330, it gives you a basic understanding where everyone else is. I'm sensitive to the comment that we are not racing to the bottom, and I don't think we should. We are not Waterloo. We are not Hamilton. We are none of those cities. What we do have are a council with vision, charged with the stewardship of this community. By your direction, we met with city staff, who I commend for bringing together stakeholders, food trucks, and brick and mortar restaurants. Rather than talk about extreme rhetoric from one side to the other, absolutely, let's not race to the bottom. What we would like to ask council to consider is the proposal that was mentioned last week at $350 as a base fee, with the option of $150 as a BIA fee. This will, in actual fact, be more than any of the cities that are nearby. However, I have absolute confidence in our ability to collaborate with our friends at Brick and Mortar, with BIA retailers and merchants, and I have absolute faith in the city staff who can envision these world-class events that we hope to bring to Kitchener this summer. If you give us this 1 year, this pilot program 1 year, if you give us the opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to this community, we will be worthy of that trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are just a few questions. Councillor Babich.
Thanks, and thanks, Ruben, for coming in and sort of laying out clearly where as a group you feel you're at it. I think as you heard last week, we were sort of all over the map, from lower than amounts than you suggested, much higher amounts than you suggested, and stuff in between. I guess my one question then is in looking at that fee, and building, I guess, on the question that was asked of Mr. Ganu, what you're getting at essentially is this concept of having a base fee that would give you the rights to sort of do the parks, do the area around the center and the square, do the Thursday night events, that kind of thing. And but if there were sort of one-off events like the food truck festival and so on, there would be a separate fee for that, and essentially you would pick from a list of a menu of options.
That's correct. Corey Bloom said it correctly, that it would give us an option to participate at these events based on our availability. Many food trucks have already committed to their event schedule as early as December of 2013. So rather than pay for events that we wouldn't be available for, we would like to participate and pay for the ones that we do.
Okay. I know one of the other ideas that was raised last week was sort of the notion of something closer in the area towards Victoria Park as well, and but over by the playground potentially. As well as some have even suggested, if there were other parks that were identified over the course of a year that, they might be of interest as well. Is that something that potentially would be of interest to the group?
It would be of extreme interest to the group. We're not asking for everything here today and now. What we want is a foot in the door to be able to demonstrate what it is that we can contribute to the community. If we're given that opportunity, you'll see the same things that has happened in other communities, that we can indeed contribute. We can raise funds for charitable organizations. We can, in fact, as everyone uses the term, animate our cities, collaborate with our friends within the city. We can do all those things.
And the last question I have is, last week, Councillor Galloway-Seelock referenced this notion of, perhaps one of the things we need to start looking at doing is coordinating better between the various cities that are looking at this, and as well as the region, because obviously they're responsible for health inspections around this. And I know in talking with you and others that at times has been a bit of a challenge, because you keep getting re-inspected for every license. If we do pursue that kind of a dialogue with the other municipalities and so on, and we'd obviously have to involve the various BIAs and the municipalities, would the food trucks be willing to be part of those kinds of discussions?
Most absolutely. At the end of the day, if we were to share information more so, we wouldn't have duplication of services between departments. We would end up cutting our costs and justify lower fees for our food trucks. We will get better at this. Absolutely.
Thanks, and I really do appreciate how much, how willing all of you have been to be part of the discussion and see how we can find a solution that works for everybody and can really be hopefully something that's a win-win for the community.
Okay, questions for the delegation. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an apples-to-apples comparison. I know you've given us the license fee for a number of municipalities in your presentation. Do you also pay event fees in all of those cities?
We do pay event fees. In Waterloo, we enjoy a special status with the BIA, and they will extend to us a discount in terms of 50% in some of these event fees. And in other cities, just recently, in participating in So Hungry, we paid a fee to be part of that BIA as well, which entitles us to a discounted rate as well moving forward for any of the events that they hold. I'm glad to see that at So Hungry there was people from the cities of Kitchener and surrounding cities who wanted to take a look at what food truck events can actually do for communities.
Can you give me an example of what some of those fees are? And I'm not talking the big ones that you have to pay when it's, like a Blues Fest or an Oktoberfest, but some of the city-run fees that and city-run festivals or events that you have to pay fees. Can you give me actual numbers?
I think that Corey is correct, that there's some, they'll range between $200 and $300 per event. and that's pretty much standard. There are other communities or other cities that do charge significantly more, but like most business people, if it's too rich, we don't participate. If we can't afford it, we certainly don't participate. We have to stay within our means, and we leave it to our individual food trucks to choose what it is that they can afford and think that they could benefit from.
Okay, just here's where I'm coming from, just briefly, is that for potentially a $650, you get an all-in fee, and I get that you may not hit every event, but if it's my understanding, and by the numbers, it potentially could actually be cheaper for you, or is that not something to consider, or is this the way you want to go with a license fee and event fee, and then maybe look at something like that in the future and really see where?
I think there is this natural psychology to people that when they look at a car, they look at that base price. And will they pay more than that base price? Absolutely. But it's that base price that starts it all. It's that base price, which is what apples to apples every other community is doing. And because not every city is the same, not all bylaws are the same, the base price, the bottom price is really what we're looking at. There are differences between this city and Waterloo, in Guelph, and too many to list, I suppose. But what's most important is that we look at that number and we think, as small business people, this is what we think we could afford.
That's fair. And you don't have to answer this question, but I want to ask it. So if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I would think that you have done in the past a lot of business in Hamilton, just by the nature of how many of you have gone there and spoken about it. Would you say that in a year that you would spend more than $650 between your license fee and all the events that you do there that are city-run events?
I guess the misconception about Hamilton is based on just their special events. Special events is just one aspect of it, and in one of our earlier council meetings, someone stood up here and they spoke about the daily access to commerce, to sell. That's what really matters. That someone asked the question whether or not price would be more important than the opportunities. Well, the price has to be commensurate to those opportunities. And what Hamilton does offer is the ability to go to many different places, not pay that much, and conduct daily business. That's what Hamilton does. Are we suggesting that that's what we should do here as well? No, I think that Kitchener will find its own place. We just want to find it in the basic realm of where everyone else is, and we'll be able to compete from there.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I'm still just trying to wrap my brain around all this and who does what and all that kind of stuff. So I really do appreciate your answers. It's helping me a lot. And just one question of clarification for you with regards to your presentation. You said you said the $350 plus the BIA fee. Was that for full access in the downtown, or just the BIA fee with what was outlined as options in the downtown last committee?
My understanding of the $150 BIA fee was in reference to developing that one night, and I could be corrected by Corey Bloom, that there are costs associated to that. We understand that there are costs associated to that. We're also mindful of the fact that food trucks will probably add and augment that type of event in a way that would be unique. There are bookstores have sales all the time. Introduce food trucks to it. All of a sudden, 1,000 people will show up. Sidewalk sales aren't nothing new. Introduce food trucks to it. It's called So Hungry. We have lots of festivals, and if we took advantage of the ability of food trucks to help, to contribute, to create something a little bit different, we could find that the community will indeed benefit.
Okay, I don't disagree. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
5 minutes is up. We'll move
I'm
on.
done. Thank you.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Ruben, thanks very much for being so organized and being the voice for your group, United Food Trucks. I'd just like to clarify what you're saying here. Is it the 200 base fee plus 150, or is it 350 plus 150 for the BIA?
We heard concerns last week, and the term that resonated with us was racing to the bottom. And what we wanted to do was demonstrate our ability to walk towards the middle and compromise, that we can meet in the middle and make this work. 350 is more than what any of us first started off with. And I think what has to happen is there are hardline comments being made on each side. None of those things are going to work. Somewhere in the middle is where it's going to be. And if we have to step forward and make that adjustment, then it's going to be us. We have to do this. It is so important that we service Kitchener as part of KW for our region, for our regional industry to succeed. There's no such thing as food trucking in KW without Kitchener.
Thank you so much for that. And that's, those were great sentiments and very wise words. In terms of the distance separation, do you have a thought about that? It was 20 meters recommended by your group before. Do you have a thought about that? Has that changed?
We've always felt that 20 meters was our compromise as well, simply because we looked at Waterloo as the accepted comparable, because it is the W in the KW, rather than looking that much further. We also looked at 30 meters, which is the prevailing meterage in Hamilton. The difference between the two markets is that in Kitchener, private property, whether we got permission from a owner doesn't supersede the meterage, whereas in every other jurisdiction it does. So 20 meters is what we felt would be a compromise. Please note that 20 meters exists both to the left and to the right, and therefore what we're really looking at is 40 meters between.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Okay, the last question, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm still not clear. You said give us this year and then we'll work it out. When you say that, what is it, what are you looking at for this year?
Councillor, if we were given the opportunity to operate at a cost that is comparable in that bigger group, what we're hoping is that we could engage in community activities where next year at this time, stakeholders in this community will be asking for food trucks to be more prominent in the community. That's what we're thinking, that in every other city, this is the trend that's happening. This is not a KW phenomenon, this is a global movement, and that by next year, we're hoping that we could integrate food trucks within the community, not because we're asking for it, but because the BIA, the community, is asking for it.
Okay, so you're looking for a rate this year of 300?
I'm sorry, please?
What is the rate that you're looking for this year?
What we've suggested is 350 as a base, and then add that 150 of the BIA above that. So 350 is the base rate that we're looking at.
Okay. I have a theoretical question that I would like to ask.
Yes, sir.
To me, I still look at a level playing field. And to me, there are two things that come into play, only two things with you and the bricks and mortar, and those are taxes and fees. Everything else is not part of it. I mean, whether someone pays a lot of lease expense, rental expense, those are outside the picture. To my way of thinking, we charge our bricks and masonry places, I understand, $700 a year for fees. Would it be fair, in your mind, if we charge food trucks, say $1,200 or $1,300 a year, and allowed them to go anywhere in the community. To me, that you would be paying the $700 the way the bricks and mortars place pays, and the other $500 or $600 would be the equivalent of property taxes that the bricks and mortars pay. But with that fee, you would be allowed to set up throughout the city.
It's a fair question, and let me answer it this way. The prevailing food truck model requires food trucks to own more than one food truck license. That the appeal to food trucks is not limited to you being grounded to one spot where you're limited to only that. The difference between the fees charged to a restaurant is that restaurant will be there 24/7 all the time, whereas a food truck who will probably own between 2, 3, sometimes even four food truck licenses to keep that appeal alive and relevant. We wouldn't be at that exact same time always. What we're hoping for is a food truck model where there will be a healthy group of people that at any particular site you'll be able to enjoy different types of food at any one time, not necessarily the same. And so if we looked at other markets and how they address this exact same thing, the fees are based for restaurants for a 24/7 occupancy or a grounding to that one site, whereas food trucks would only be occupying it at certain times.
No, in my model, that was the extra amount you paid allowed you to move anywhere. It didn't tie you to a site.
Yes.
It's a one-time fee, an annual fee, but it would allow you to move to different places at different times, provided that there's got to be some order here that that at any particular spot you can't have a dozen trucks. You could probably only have 3 or 4. Would be on a first come first service.
I understand the question. The hallmark to food trucking is that it's the mobile nature of our business. That in fact, even when you say that we would be able to operate anywhere we wanted to in a city, that the appeal to that food truck would waver if we only operated in one. The spirit behind UFT is that on a regional scale, we'll have access to many different types of food trucks, whether they be based in Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, or Guelph, and you'll get to see and experience those foods. Not that you would have to travel to many different types of restaurants, but these people will be traveling from city to city to provide you and that type of diversity in food.
Okay.
5 minutes is up.
5 minutes is up? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's all, Ruben. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll go back to Councillor Benovich for a motion, and I would respectfully suggest that, as I indicated before, we have talked about this now for at least 3 times. I don't see the need for us to go into a long discussion about this. We need to clarify the fees. There's no question about that. That's probably the most important part. But let's, when we get to the motion, let's speak only to the motion and the individual parts of that motion. Councillor Benovich.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask maybe the clerk to put it on the screen and to pass them out. And what I...
Rita, could you pass these?
There are some changes from last week, Councillor Gazzola, and what we've tried to do is, what I've tried to do is capture some of the input from various members of council over the past week and at committee last week in terms of the various input that's before us. And I've put that in bold so that we're clear on it.
I recognize there may need to be some clarity around the question that was asked of Mr. Bloom earlier. In terms of comments and feedback, and I will point out that I know I've personally received lots of feedback over social media and so on over the past week. It's probably been one of the most engaged topics that I've heard from folks on. In the motion, under parks, added Victoria Park in the vicinity of the Victoria Park Pavilion. I know both that and Joseph Street were raised last time. And the reference that, you know what, there may be parks that we haven't thought of, quite frankly, that staff can deal with on a staff basis if they come up over the course of a year. Under the Civic District, in the motion that was appearing on in the report, the Civic District was mentioned twice, and the notion that I had brought forward last week with respect to Civic District was permit 1 to 3 food trucks to operate on a daily basis in conjunction with the center in the square. On the issue of fees, we heard tonight this notion of a $350 annually daily operations fee, and that fee is really designed to cover off the daily operations kinds of things, such as any private property, park locations here on Business Park, Thursday night special events. So the one-time promotional events that Corey referenced in the report last week, all those kinds of daily things. And then that there would be a $150 per event for participating in a city-approved food truck festival if you have a daily operations license, and it would be $250 if you don't. In other words, you would get a lower fee for those special events if you have a daily operations license. And Corey's explained that there are other events that they deal with, and they would continue to deal with them at a staff level and consistent with how Waterloo and others do it. On the issue of the 150, in addition, there would be a 150 BIA fee, and I know that I think it was Councillor Davey who's referenced the notion and others around, is there a way of acknowledging people who are already paying fees in the downtown? And so part of the idea there is, if you're already paying because you happen to be a food truck and have a business in the downtown, you shouldn't be paying a BIA fee twice. And so it's trying to address that. And then the final change is that the report, in addition to coming back in January of 2015 and the review of the license fees, that we work to try to coordinate with the neighboring municipalities, because that, at the end of the day, is really what's at issue here. I think, Mr. Mayor, part of the problem is that what we're trying to do is we're sort of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, trying to get everything in the food truck industry to work the way we're used to working at the city in terms of normal businesses and all that kind of thing. But the reality is that this is a different type of business. You can't be a food truck operator and be operating in Kitchener and Waterloo the same day if you have one truck. That's part of the reality here, and that's where, in the long run, I think the kind of coordination that Councillor Galloway-Seelock talked about is important. So I would hope that we can support this motion here tonight. I think the motion is really about moving this forward for another year. A year or two from now, when we've got 2 new condos fully built and people living in them, and another 1,500 people living in the core, some of these things aren't going to be an issue anymore. But I think what we've been able to come up with is a balanced approach that's really going to allow for a win-win. It's something that supports small business. It's something that provides benefits to the community, to our residents who want to see food trucks. I know a number of us have been talking to people around this and who see this as a priority, not just for the downtown, but for vibrancy throughout the community. And with it being for another year, we'll have a chance to review it at the end of that. We'll learn from the process. And in the end, I think it's going to add to the offerings and to the vibrancy of our community. And I would hope that we can support it. And so I'm moving this, and Councillor Ioannidis has indicated he's prepared to second it.
All right, now we have beginning of some speakers to the motion, and as I say, try to deal with the principal points of the motion. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I first have a question of the motion. On the back page, bullet number 3, I guess it is, where it says 150 per event for participating in the city-approved food truck festival. Yes. Is that per truck, or is that per truck or for the event?
My understanding in the past.
Do you want to just a second?
Oh, sorry,
you're going to have to put your microphone on.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that that's per truck, but Mr. Bloom can clarify that. That's, I think, how it's operated in the past.
Mr. Bloom, is that correct?
Yes, through the mayor, it would be per truck, and then there's still the event fee, which, unless council waives the $244 event fee, that staff will still have to pay that fee. So the 150 is per truck who participates.
Okay. I thought I had it all worked out in my head, but it doesn't make any sense anymore. So one other question with regards to Victoria Park, and I'm not sure if you can answer this, Corey, but the portion that's added with regard to Victoria Park, the city of the pavilion, is that not where one of our licensed hot dog carts is located?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay. I would have extreme concerns with adding a food truck there, because it would basically take away that business for that individual. So I would ask for that to be taken separately. Are we looking for comments at this point?
Yes, I'd like to go down around once only, because we could be here for all evening if we go back and forth. So everything at one time.
I think we probably even still have questions of staff, and I'm sorry for prolonging this, but I think we need to understand it, and I think the food truck needs to understand it as well.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Here is where I'm trying to get at, and I've been trying to get at it all night with the delegations. The way this motion is written, if I understand correctly, is it's $350. That's the license fee. For any festival that they're operating in a city festival, they're going to be, each truck is paying $150.
For a food truck festival.
So if they participate in 2 events at the City of Kitchener, they have now reached their $650. So if they go with a third, they're actually paying more than what we were proposing last week.
I think it's a fair question, and I think go back to the mover of the motion in terms of the definition, because it has handwritten in there.
I'm trying to...
I know, but a city-approved food truck festival. Please define food truck festival, Councilor Urbanovich.
Well, I understand, again, from what Mr. Bloom outlined in his previous report, staff were planning to have 2 festivals. We had one last year, a mini one, where they bring together a number of trucks and have a food truck festival in a given area that have those trucks there, and they promote it and so on. But Mr. Bloom can clarify further, I guess.
Mr. Bloom.
Through the mayor, so yes, this summer we have 2 plans so far. One is on July the 5th, and the other is July, I believe, 28th, the last Sunday of the month. So both of those are food truck festivals that I believe that Councillor Urbanovic is referencing here.
Okay, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yes. So I'm clear. So that's just for the 2 food truck festivals. But in addition to that, with that chart that we had up on the screen before the motion went up, each food truck, if they're participating in any other city event, there's going to be another fee that they have to pay. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, and that would be at the discretion of the event operator. And maybe just to clarify, the fee for the $244 is a licensing fee that goes to general revenues. The vendor fee typically goes to the event operators, and it helps them cover the cost of the event, just so that everyone's clear on that.
I just quickly, and I know I'm probably close to my 5 minutes, and if you can just indulge me in an extra minute or 2, I won't go on forever. What I'm trying to establish here is that with the $6.50 that was being proposed last week, food truck operators were actually getting a deal compared to the rest of the municipalities with regards to special event fees and with our food truck festivals coming in. I specifically asked whether or not the food trucks wanted to go that way I understand, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is I understand that each food truck may not be able to participate in every special event. But I think if we had gone with the $6.50 option, you'd actually be paying less to operate in the city of Kitchener. But because I've asked you your questions, I've asked the questions today, I will support this motion. But I think it's something that we really need to look at next year, because at the end of the day, that $6.50 would have been a deal. And I don't think everyone understands that at this point, that $6.50 would have been a deal. You're actually paying more, likely to pay more if you're participating in 2 food truck events, in one other event in the city of Kitchener, that with regards to city-run events. But I have to go with what the food truck people have said, and I'll support this recommendation, except for the part about Victoria Park, and I'd ask that to be taken separately. Thank you.
I've made a note of that. We'll do that. Okay. We can. Yeah, we all have the motion in front of us, and I think we'll put the chart back up. And if we need to, we'll go back and put the motion back on the screen a little later on. Oh, okay, hang on a second. Okay. Okay, the next speaker is Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Bloom, so you've already outlined that there are 2 food truck events a year. About how many food trucks participate in an event like this that we've had in the past?
Through the mayor, the festival we held last year, we had 7 trucks participate. This year, it again depends on the availability and willingness of the trucks to participate. We expect for the 2 events somewhere between 12 and 18 trucks, provided everybody's available and willing to come. That's our goal for this summer.
And you've already mentioned that there, in special events, that there's a alternate, I guess, organizer for the event, that they may charge a fee for their event as well. How about special events that are organized through economic development in the downtown core, outside of a special food trucking event? Do we charge a fee for that as well, or does that fee come back to the city?
Through the mayor, just to clarify, so you're asking festivals the city doesn't operate but that a food truck might be at? Was that the question?
A special festival or an event outside of the food truck event festival that the city may be organizing. Is there a fee charge for food trucks to be present, and does that fee come back to the city?
Through the mayor, yes, and that would be, as I mentioned, at the discretion of the operator, depending on the scale and size of the festival. Some may warrant a smaller fee than others, and then typically that money comes back to the city, and then the city, typically that would go into to help cover the cost of the event.
Right, so there are additional costs that the food trucking industry has to kind of, is impactful on them. Okay, all right. Mr. Mayor, I'll make my comments as well. I think this has gone on for quite a long time, so I think we need to make a decision on this. And I'm not looking for something that's a deal for the city. I'm not looking for something that's a deal for the food trucking industry. I'm looking for something that's fair and balanced. And I think I mentioned those words that we need to be careful, not race for the bottom. And I appreciate the comments to the delegation that they've looked to find a compromise as to what's amenable and suitable for both aspects. And actually, as a part of this motion too, I'm not sure if there's special direction that's required. For the report that would come back, I would like to see the impact to the city as for what the cost was to administer the program, and what the ongoing cost would be, for us to be able to make that assessment at that point, that after we looked at it as a 1-year trial period, do we want to continue subsidizing if there is an aspect of subsidizing? And I would be looking at the food trucking industry to live up to their promise and what is going to be expected from the city as well, that they will equitably participate in the vibrancy of this community and of the various events that happen here as well, to show a strong presence to show, obviously, at the end of the day, I myself had proposed a higher fee, but an all-in fee. But I see the motion that's before us, that if everyone participates, or there's a strong participation from the various operators, that they may very well end up paying very close to what the all-in fee, even as high as, I think I had mentioned $1,300, may not be as high, but very close to it. So I see and recognize that the costs are still there, and that you are paying your fair share, provided that you are participating for something that's expected by this city as well. And that's the whole aspect of this being looked at as a very temporary, as a one-time trial basis, and for us to be able to reassess back in January of next year. So based on those reasons alone, I would be willing to support this, but I think we have to have a very comprehensive review when this does come back. But I think this is a fair compromise that should be suitable to my, I guess, my satisfaction.
Mr. Chapman, you have something to add to the question that Councillor Singh raised?
Through you, Mayor Zare, Councillor Singh has asked if additional direction needs to be given to look at this issue of full cost recovery for administration and enforcement. And I'd suggest that that is the understanding of the very last clause in the motion. We will undertake that review as a part of looking at the fees to be set, and that will come back to Council with the report.
So that can be implicit in that. You'll have to press, oh, you did, okay. Go ahead.
And the reason why I had asked that, I'm glad that's in it, is that when we have a very limited fee, so either we can enforce at a cost to us, or there's a lack of enforcement, and then there's issues that arise from it too. And that's the real assessment that I would want to see as part of the report.
Fair enough. Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Just a note that Councillor Dan Graham had suggested the $350 last week. So it's interesting that it's coming back at a slight different variation. Corey, I just want to double check, and I apologize for asking probably what sounds like the same question. The Downtown Live and the Thursday night partnership program and the minor event, on here I see that on the chart that you have, it says staff recommend waiving these licensing fees. So that would still stand in light of this recommendation by Councillor Benedict.
Through the mayor, there's nothing in the motion that would suggest that those fees be waived. So I guess unless that was added into the motion, the assumption is that the event organizer, whether that's special events or economic development, would still be paying that $244 fee for those events. Our recommendation was to waive it simply because it's just city transferring money from one place to another. And we would rather use those funds to make, for example, the Thursday night, to be able to put those funds towards the Thursday night, whether that's programming or what have you.
I apologize for looking puzzled, because I thought I heard you say that this motion doesn't address this, that economic development would still, or BIA would still expect that food trucks operators would still have to pay these fees. Is that what I understood?
Through the chair, the event operator, so whoever the organizer of the event is, would still have to pay that $244 fee.
Okay, and I definitely see where Councillor Galloway-Seelow was going on this. My concern is that, and I heard what the truck operator said, and I heard what the United Truck Operator Representative Rubin said. When I look at this chart and I look at the motion, I fear that you guys are going to end up paying a fair bit, but it will be entirely up to the truck operators if they wish to attend the event. And I think that that's what my understanding is, that they want the option. They don't want to pay all in because they want to be able to attend whatever event they wish. And if they pay, then they can play. Is that what I heard from you? You can nod. Let me know if that's what I'm hearing. I guess that was the only concern I have, is this $150 per event, because it really only covers 2 events compared to this chart that I see. So I'm still struggling with that. The $150 annual fee payable to the BIA would cover what?
Through the mayor, that would cover, essentially help to contribute towards the cost for live music, for marketing, for logistics, setup, and some staff time. I think we estimated the full cost of that, of running every Thursday for 4 months, is in the neighborhood of $4,000. The BIA is willing to provide some of the funds. So what we collect from the food trucks would only be a portion of the total cost, and the BIA would help with some of the rest.
Okay, thanks, Corey. So that's just the Thursday event then. Right. Okay. All right. I'll just make my comment. It's been a real challenge to understand all the different implications and ramifications of this. And I thought it was pretty simple originally. Food trucks are a desired option for many people. It's an opportunity to provide a variety of different food. And I was hoping that really what I would see here was a $350 annual operating license with a $150 BIA, and each fee would be decided by whatever operator of the event would be. I'm a little bit concerned that it could be $240, but nevertheless, it looks like I may support this at this point in time.
Okay. Point of order, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I know I've apologized a few times for convoluting the water, but I'm going to do it even more. I would appreciate if we could call back one of the delegations in order to understand, now that there's a little bit more clarity around the costing and fees, if we could call back one of the delegations to understand the position of the food trucks.
Highly unusual.
I realize that.
And I also was going to suggest that there seems to be some lack of clarity on the issue of license fee and vendor fee. And I think this is the point that Mr. Bloom was just speaking to. And let's get that clarified a little bit clearer first, okay, and then we'll consider whether or not we will ask a delegation to come back.
Okay.
Councillor Verbanovich, I think it's your motion, so what was your intent with the license fee, which this is, plus the vendor fee?
So my understanding, Mr. Mayor, and to be honest with you, I mean, every time we deal with this, there's sort of new info that keeps coming forward. My understanding was that there were license fees that we as a city charged. And so the $350 base fee with the $150 BIA was the base package. The option of the $150/$250 pertained to the food truck festivals only. I myself, even after all of this, quite frankly, am somewhat concerned, because now I'm hearing there's also a separate vendor fee in all of this. And I don't think that was the intent, quite frankly, for me at least. And it seems, I get that, for example, if Blues Festival has an event, it's their event, they charge whatever fee they want for someone to be here, just like Jazz Festival does up in Waterloo or whatever. But if it's a city event, quite frankly, something that we normally do as part of our normal course of business, it should be included in the license fees, and we shouldn't be one-offing it in terms of additional stuff. But maybe Mr. Bloom can add some further clarity, which is, I think, where Councillor Galloway-Seelock's trying to go.
Yeah, through the chair, maybe to simply as I can make it, what council would simply need to suggest is that if for any events that the city is operating where the food trucks that are participating have paid the licensing fee, that there not be a special event fee on top of the fee. So for example, when we do Discovery Square this year, if there was a food truck present, the operator, so special events would have to pay the licensing fee of $244. What I'm hearing from council is that if that truck is an already licensed truck under the fee that you're establishing today, that there wouldn't be an additional $244 fee for that event. So there are two different fees. There's sort of called the food truck fee and the special event fee, and I think that's where some of the confusion is happening.
All right.
So I don't know that helped, but
so I haven't been as close to this, so let me try. That with that clarification, it's 350 plus the 150. Ignore the 250 issue in the second paragraph for this point. If there is a completely different event and someone hasn't purchased, doesn't have the original fee, they're going to be charged at $244.
Yes.
I think it's that simple. Okay?
Well, it could, sorry, my mic's still on. I don't know if I have the floor.
No, you don't. Just a second. Let's get that clarified. Is that correct, Mr. Bloom?
Through to the mayor, yes. If there is an event and a food truck or a food vendor is coming to that event who isn't licensed already by the city, yes, the event organizer would be charged a $244 licensing fee.
Correct. It's not an add-on.
No.
It is instead of for that one event. Just a moment, please. First of all, you don't speak unless you're in the queue and the microphone is on. If it's worth being said, I know you did. I'm saying if it's worth saying, everyone should be hearing it. And if you wish to add something, get into the queue again. Okay, so it's clear that that is a separate issue and not an add-on. Now, having said that, are you still asking Councillor Galloway-Seelock for the, and I think we will ask Council to decide whether or not we want to hear the delegation again, because we could be going around in circles like this forever this evening, and that's what I said at the very beginning. I don't think it's wise, but go ahead.
I realize that. I think there still needs to be further clarification. The special event license fee aside, okay, I think it may have just dawned on me. So,
I think it deals with your issue.
Can I just ask Corey to give me an example? Let's just use Kids Park. Okay, let's have a concrete example. Can you tell me what a food truck would pay to participate in Kids Park?
Through the mayor, if a food truck was participating at Kids Park, the event operator would be charged the licensing fee of $244. The operator then would typically charge a vendor fee to whatever that operator wants to set. It could be $244 to cover that fee. It could be whatever they wish to set. Typically, the vendor fee is to help cover the cost of the event. So what I think I'm hearing is if the food truck is already licensed and they are the ones participating in Kids Park, then I think what I'm hearing is it doesn't make sense to also charge the event organizer $244 to have that truck come out as well.
Correct.
Okay. So then I just ask the motion just for clarification, because I can probably avoid the delegation at this point. Does that mean that number 3 on the back page, the 150 per event, is no longer there for Food Truck Festival?
Mr. Bloom?
Well, it should be Councillor Banovich's, because it's the motion. And then I promise if that's the case, I will not say one more word on this issue.
The intent of the 2 individual fees was specifically as they related to the food truck festivals, so that the food truck people could pick from a menu of options, which is what we heard them say. So it dealt purely with those 2 festivals that were going to happen. The other stuff is covered off, I think, as Mayor Zare outlined with the understanding.
So the answer to your last question, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, is the 150 is still there, but that is different from the Kids Park example that you were using, which is a good example. Okay? So I'm going to go back to the speakers list. Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you very much. And I want to just take my hat off to the food vendors of all stripes tonight. First of all, the restaurants for being so respectful of the dialogue that can be emotional because you've had a lot of skin in the game for a long time. Also the food truck operators who have come together to offer something more than what was being considered last week in a sense. And when I was suggesting the base rate, you actually increased it but still kept the concept of a base rate with add-ons, which is where I sensed you wanted to be. So I really appreciate the fact that we have a food culture that's growing in this city and that you all want to be part of it. And I think that Ms. Yutzi said it very well in her letter. She said, "We approach this with an open mind towards competition, growth, and enhancing the streets of downtown Kitchener as the ultimate goal. Our meetings were friendly and both sides were considerate to each other." She says, "The focus should be on how we can work together. I believe there is a win here for everyone." And I think that's true. And it's about expanding the partnerships that we have. It's about expanding the food culture that we are enjoying right now. And it's also about what is best for the whole city. And I think we have a good win-win solution here. I would, it doesn't speak to it here, but I would recommend that we would institute it says 30-meter distance separation. I would amend to 20 meters. I would raise that amendment, and I support the rest of the motion with the understanding that the special events fee that we see on the left column would be waived, and that if people wish to participate in a further event, in addition to the base rate for operating in and around the city, then they would pay the $150. I think that makes eminent sense. I also think we should consider waiving the Cinco de Mayo Art Market and Discovery Square fees altogether, as Mr. Bloom indicated. I think that's something that should be ongoing. So a really good job by all involved. I think we should all be proud to be part of our city tonight and the food culture that's growing within it.
Okay, Councillor Glengarry, just for clarification, I picked up the 20 meter to 30 meter, 30 to 20 rather, as we'll take that one separately. And then you also said to eliminate the 244. I'm not sure you meant that, because if someone doesn't have an original license, they would have nothing. So that's...
No, sir, you're absolutely right. I meant if they have a license. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, so that won't necessarily be required to do an amendment for that then. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll be brief. This food truck issue is giving me indigestion. It's one of the most delicate balancing acts I've had to perform since being on council, because I want to please and respect the business needs of the numerous brick and mortar restaurants in my downtown ward who work so hard to stay afloat in the core. And at the same time, I want to please and respect the needs of food truck operators and, in addition, meet the demands of the thousands of people who enjoy food trucks, but also, I'm convinced, want to see healthy restaurants in our downtown. I could have lived with a higher fee for food trucks if that fee included added costs we charge for various events. And I can also live, and I will support this motion, with a lower fee, as long as it's crystal clear that truck operators will pay add-on payments on top of the fee, the $350 fee, when the trucks want to attend certain events. And just a quick comment, Mr. Chair, on the other item, the Victoria Park item in my ward. I'm okay with a food truck on the pavilion side of the park, but to ease the resulting impact on restaurants very close to the Joseph Street entrance, I would be against trucks being allowed on at that Joseph Street location. And it was mentioned we've got a hot dog vendor over on the pavilion side, I don't remember seeing that vendor for some time. Whether or not there's a license there, I haven't seen one for ages, so I don't know. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there just one question? Just wanted to make sure I understand this completely. So, and I'm not sure if the question is to Councillor Urbanovich or Mr. Bloom, but looking at the back part of the motion, so hypothetically speaking, if somebody did not pay the daily operations license and they wanted to come in for, say, if the food truck festival, for that single event, they would pay $250 and they would also pay the $150, so they'd be paying $400 for a single event. Is that my understanding? That is my understanding.
Mr. Bloom.
Through the mayor, for the Thursdays, the $150 add-on fee is just for Thursdays.
Just for Thursdays, right. Okay, yeah, just the food truck festivals on Thursdays. Correct. Okay. Okay, I'm content with this, and I think we've spent more than our fair share of time on this, to be frank.
Councillor Inetsky.
Yes, we have spent quite a bit of time, and I think we just got to move forward on this. It's been discussed for many hours, and I do have a question for Mr. Bloom, and maybe he can clarify it. Would it be advantageous to us that, in light of the motion that we have before us by Councillor Urbanovich, that your chart there become also an addendum or a part of that motion for clarity? Would that be beneficial or not?
Mr. Bloom?
Through the mayor, yes. I think that would certainly help our licensing staff be clear on what council's direction is.
Okay, so instead of going through all this, I would then like to amend Councillor Urbanovich's motion, which I would be prepared to support. I know we've been all over the board in terms of setbacks and license fees and per events, etc. And I think that it's clear that this report will come back next year for review. The figures that have, the fees that have been suggested, I think are reasonable by Councillor Urbanovich. And by adding this as an addendum, which I hope, which I would like to add to his motion, would provide clarity, as Mr. Bloom has outlined, and this way we can all move forward. And because otherwise, if everybody's making these minor little changes here or there, which they do have reasonable, rationale to it, we could be here forever. The whole thing could be all resolved next year in terms of a finalization through a staff review. So that's my
I'll come back to that. We'll take all of the amendments separately. I would add you can move that this vendor fee schedule be added as an addendum. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I had just a little clarification I wanted to add to the motion as well. And as well, I wanted to make a quick comment afterwards from just the recent discussion we've had, some change or some additional questions that were asked of staff. So for permitting food trucks in one of our major parks, speaking specifically with McLennan Park, there are events that happen in the park that I can speak to that are run by the Neighborhood Association. I can speak to one particular event, which is a movie night in the McLennan Park. So I would hope that as part of the direction be given that the food truck operator work with the Neighborhood Association for that particular event. I would just hate to see the two organizations competing if they are working towards raising money or funding to make their event sustainable, and they're serving food or whatever the case may be, and then they're competing with another operator. I would see some issues arising there, and I would hope to see a little bit more cooperation rather than just working in tandem. I'm not sure if that would be amenable to Councillor Urbanovich.
It's probably a reasonable request. I want you to finish up your comments because we're going to go. You're the last speaker, except.
Yes, thank you. So, and that's to the later points, speaking to the vendor fee that's on top of the licensing fee. I think we have to just take a moment, step back, and take perspective. The vendor fee is cost recovery for the event organizer. Now, unless we're prohibiting the event organizers to be sustainable on their own, then let's take a moment and realize that we're impacting events happening in our city. So we're appeasing one side and we're having a significant impact another. So where we should be making direction on is licensing fee, where we have a direct benefit at the same time that we have a cost associated as well. Those two things are quite separate, and we have to be careful, and then we have to keep them separate as well. And I think the motion should stay the way it is, and I'm speaking to the licensing fee alone, and not muddle the water with and confuse it with relating it to vendor fees as well.
Okay. Sorry, there is one other speaker before I go to the end. Councillor Gazzola.
Excuse me, I won't keep you very long. I will support what's before us based on the fact that I think that most people will be happy with the compromise. There are two things that I would also support, and that is that I hope we see these trucks also in Victoria Park, and I also would support the 20-meter separation. I think that is adequate.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock, we really don't want to go around another time.
I would ask...
Very briefly, please.
I would just ask that we take... I would like to make a comment, but I won't. That the $150 per event for participating in city-approved food truck festivals, just that portion be taken separately, please.
Okay.
And I will not support that.
Okay. Have you spoken yet? Well, I wish people would get into the queue right away so that we know what we're dealing with here. Councillor Ioannidis, and then we're going definitely to Councillor Banovich to close it off.
Well, I've kept quiet purposely, but I just wanted to add one little point. I think the motion put forward is the right balance. And I think what we've heard clearly today is that food trucks will accept it. And I think the one additional value that hasn't been discussed is I think it will help attract new food trucks to the community. And that's where I think we can generate some further revenue.
Did you mean to press your button? Your button is on. Recorded vote's been called for. Councillor Banovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And just very quickly, I guess, and you'll be dealing with a number of amendments, I think, if I heard correctly. And that's fine. I mean, I think putting some sort of chart and staff can figure out what that should look like based on the discussion that's happened tonight. If that adds clarity, I think that's a good thing. I think Councillor Singh's concern, it was captured in staff's original wording, which was under parks, where it read, subject to restrictions where park permit holders are providing their own food services. And if that isn't enough clarity, then I think it can be adjusted accordingly to capture what Councillor Singh was trying to say from a direction point of view. Because the point there is, if there's a group that's already in the park and has an event, we obviously want to respect that. And I think the same point was made with respect to places like Southwest Optimist and so on, when there's ball tournaments and stuff like that. I don't think anybody wants to hurt those groups either. I think just very briefly in closing, at the end, I think what this will allow us to do is provide a variety of choices on the food services continuum in our community. Everything from hot dog carts to the diversity of food trucks to the bricks and mortar restaurants in our city. And I do want to emphasize the importance of recognizing that it was those brick and mortar restaurants, some of the people in the downtown, some of the people in the Duke food block, who were part of the early believers in downtown revitalization, and believed in the downtown and have supported and have gone through the peaks and valleys along the way. I think this will take us to the next level, and in the end, I believe both our businesses and our residents, the consumers of the food from everybody, will be the winners in this.
Okay. Recorded vote has been called for. This is the order in which we will take them. The amendments, we get formal amendments on the table. Councillor Galloway-Seelock is voting to remove. Are you Victoria Park? Are you okay with that? Okay, voted on separately. I apologize. Okay, so then the first amendment is to change 30 meters. This is in the front page, the third bullet. Amend 30 meters to 20 meters. A recorded vote has been called for. Sorry, who made that? That was Councillor Glenn Graham, seconded by Councillor Gazzola. Okay, now we can vote. Okay, those in favor? Those opposed? The amendment carries. It is now 20 meters. The amendment to add the vendor fee schedule. This is the additional schedule that was tabled this evening. For reference, the $244 schedule. That is moved by Councillor Yanetsky, seconded by Councillor Fernandez. Record a vote on that as well? Okay, record a vote. It's just to add it, yes. Those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We'll now go back to the second bullet, and taking the Victoria Park in the vicinity of Victoria Park Pavilion, taking that one portion only separately. Councillor Gazzola?
I just wanted to clarify that we've had so much discussion on this. I want recorded votes on each section.
That's fine. We'll do that.
Thank you.
So, again, this is just for the phrase related to Victoria Park, this vote, okay? This is to remove that phrase. That's the amendment. Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. No, I'm sorry, this was just to take it separately. I beg your pardon. Okay. We will now go for the recorded vote. It comes out. If you vote yes, it comes out. I'm sorry, I'm confusing you. Let me start over again. If you're voting yes, it remains as printed. I beg your pardon. There is no motion. This is just taking voting on it separately. It's in. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Victoria Park near the pavilion remains. To what? Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yes, I asked to take the $150 per event for participating in the food truck festival separately. Instead, I have decided I'd like to make an amendment to reduce that to $100 per event, because if we leave it at $150, in essence, we're charging food trucks $650. So I changed that to
Okay, the amendment is for $100. Is there a seconder? Councillor Glenn Graham. Voting on the amendment to change, this is the second bullet on the second page. Amendment is for 100. Those in favor of that amendment? Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion carries. I think those are the only amendments. So the balance of the report then, all the other items, as amended. Those in favor? Or, sorry, hang on a second. The voting will... Now we can vote. Those in favor? That carries unanimously. Amazing. Now, I'm going to call on Mr. Chapman to now talk of next steps. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. So licensing staff will be available starting tomorrow to process applications for food trucks based on the direction set tonight. Legal will expedite the preparation of a bylaw. Although it will be accelerated, we will bring it back to a special council meeting next Monday. So assuming that bylaw passes and that food truck operators have a complete application ready, we'll be in a position to issue licenses starting a week tomorrow.
Okay, and otherwise, just for those who are here and watching, otherwise it would have to wait until May the 26th to our next council meeting, and we felt it was important to get this dealt with through the bylaw process. And just that's a procedural thing. The decision has essentially been made, but it doesn't become law until we pass that bylaw, which will be done next week at a special council meeting. So thank you for being here, and thank you for participating in getting us to where we are. Yeah, does anyone have their food truck here? We might get hungry. Okay, we will now deal with the tenders. There are no other delegations. Oh, I'm sorry. And I missed it. I'm not doing so well today. I apologize. Is Rasad Kaplani here? Okay. Okay. Because I overlooked that. I'm sorry. Okay, now we will go to the tenders. Someone prepared to move the tenders? Councillor Yanetsky, second by Councillor Davey. Are there any questions? Councillor Gazzola, deal with them one at a time. On the first one, this is Sterling Avenue. Is that the one you have a question on?
Well, I really have a general question, but it applies here. On this particular one, are there any other phases left, or is this complete, all the phases?
Ms. Houston.
This is actually the second phase of two phases, and the asphalt will be next year as well.
Yeah. But this, okay. My question here really relates to this project. Now that we issued the tender, is completely done. Why do we not close out this account? There's a surplus in it. Why does that not get closed out into a surplus account? The way we have it, we have all kinds of amounts left in all sorts of accounts. It would be, to my way of thinking, appropriate that once a tender's been let, that we then close out that account.
Mr. Chapman. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure who's going to... Are you going to speak to it, Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mayor Zaire. I had the same question when I saw the tender, and as Ms. Houston indicated, the top coat of asphalt is yet to be done. That's not included in the costs you see for this phase of work. So when that work is ultimately tendered and done in 2015, any balance remaining would be closed out. So we're only dealing with the surplus from the current phase. There is still work to be done in 2015.
Okay, I saw that there were contingencies in the tender. That doesn't cover the so what is the surplus on this particular project, and what are we looking at to do the asphalting?
I don't have that number. It will be something less than what's remaining in the account, but it would be engineering's practice to close it out once the project is complete.
Well, okay, because it's a $400,000 surplus, and it's, to me, that should be closed out if you wanted to leave a small portion for the asphalt. But I just think it's better accounting, and everybody knows in whatever accounts we keep our surpluses what's available, as opposed to having to have staff go through to, whenever anything comes up, we have to go through to there are a number of accounts, and it's amazing how many accounts out there that do have funds in them.
That's a fair comment, and I would suggest that we could discuss that, but as a policy, not on the individual policies, and so, or individual tenders, and so that could come back. All right. Anything further on the tenders? Sorry, was Councillor Fernandez, were you on that Sterling Avenue as well? Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, because I see some work being done between Cortland and Mill. Is that something that we had tendered last year, and then this is just another piece further down? Or at first I thought this was work that we were already doing, and now I understand it's brand new work.
I believe that's the bridge.
Yes,
actually,
you're correct.
Rehabilitation, which was in the budget separately. Ms. Houston?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the Sterling Avenue Road reconstruction. Does that include the price for sidewalks? Because I know that's a point of discussion that's yet ongoing with the neighborhood.
Ms. Houston.
The tender included the sidewalks. That is still an open discussion item.
Okay, perfect.
Regarding that sidewalk.
Okay, so that's still yet to be decided, but I just want to know if it's included. Okay, thank you.
Okay, nothing further on the tenders then? Yeah. Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, just an understanding of what the work that's being done at the cemetery. I know that we had, back a year or so ago, we had been working with Mattamy Homes to do some soil removal we were going to be using it. So what is the further work? I'm seeing here installation of road services, seating, and landscaping. I guess I thought the landscaping component was already taken care of with this partnership we had with Mattamy Homes.
Mr. May.
So through you, Mr. Chair, it was not. That work was to bring in the soils and grade the site. This is for the next phase of that work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, those are the only tenders. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We now move to the committee reports, the balance of the report, and following our protocol, just referring to the report itself, not reading them. Councillor Ioannidis for Community and Infrastructure Services.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Frank Etherington that the report of the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee be adopted through items through 1 to 6.
Councillor Davey on that.
Thank you, Mayor Zer. I would like to, one moment please. I would like to deal with item number 1 separately. I would also like to amend and comment on that if I could.
All right. Let's deal with that first, okay? So go ahead and make your comment.
Certainly. Well, we dealt with this in committee, and it was a long day. And anyway, it's one of those things I was thinking about letting go, and then I went back and read it again, and I thought this is something that this council should really reconsider. The item is a climate change strategy. And I'm going to refer to the report on page 6-5. And the part that concerns me about this is that it reads right in the report, the cities of Cambridge, Waterloo, and Waterloo Region have all already identified $25,000 to be utilized this year towards the climate change strategy. What we're doing here by the motion that, or the motion that's before us, is we're not even really following. We're not identifying any dollars towards this. All we're saying is the next council should consider it. Frankly, I'm concerned that we're already behind on this. We're followers on this, and we're not even identifying the dollars. So, sorry for the preamble prior to the motion, but the motion, I'm basically just editing it, so I don't think it's required that I have it written up, because I'm mostly just striking out words. But essentially, the new motion would read that the funding of, so I'll strike out the word approximately, I'll just read it out actually with the strikeouts. The funding of $25,000 per year towards a collaborative approach for facilitation of the Community Climate Action Plan implementation from 2015 to 2021 be approved as a strategic addition as outlined in the Community Services Department Report CSD-14028, and that, you can just strike out the words subject to approved funding, and the rest of the motion would read as is. So again, my concern here is that the other municipalities, smaller municipalities, have already ponied up the $25,000 for this year. There's one more line that I would put in, and that is the funding source, that it be funded from the $170,000 of remaining funds from the statue project, which would take us to this project's completion, essentially. So again, my concern is that our other municipalities, which are smaller municipalities, have already ponied up this amount of money, and I'm concerned that this council at this point, by simply asking the next council to look at it, is frankly a tiny bit embarrassing as far as climate change action is concerned. So I would ask for a recorded vote.
Speaking to this item number 1, then, I've got Councillors Singh, Gazzola, and Birbanovic. Is that the ones you want to speak to? Okay. Councillor Singh.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to note that we're not saying no to the staff recommendation. Staff came back with this report of allocating future funding for $25,000 or for 2015. Of course, that would have to be looked at by future councils. But I think this council is being responsive and accepting this as a priority, and at the same time supporting what staff has put forward. And I think it's important to be holistic with this. I recognize that Councillor Davey, his intentions are well intended, but at the same time, if you compare with priorities citywide, Councillor, we have streets, and I can refer to my ward, where some aspects of the entire boulevard trees have been cut down, and I'd ask to those that are expert that see what each tree, how much carbon emissions or carbon reduction that they have. I think that's where the priority lies. I think we have a lot of other important aspects that are not funded that also have a significant environmental impact and a benefit to this city. So that's why I would not be able to support this, and would support what staff has already outlined. And if we have some future allocation of funding available, I think we need to meet our responsibility for our pending requirements.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I will support the recommendation that's being brought forward by Councillor Davey. It's really the recommendation that a number of us voted in favor of last week, but it was defeated. I agree that we are committed to this. All of the other municipalities have set the funding aside, and we should be joining ranks. There was a lot of discussion from some members of council last week as to we were becoming fiscally irresponsible or something if we lived up to that commitment. But then shortly after that, we agreed to pay for the glockenspiel, which we hadn't ever done before. So I think we have we need to support this recommendation. We're getting a second chance at it, so I will be supporting it, and I hope all of council will.
Just a clarification, since I wasn't able to stay for this. I noticed that the period is for implementation 2015 to 2021. Is the $25,000 coming from a 2014 budget in anticipation of those following years, or is it to? I know it says per year, but I can't recall from reading the report whether it was 2014 or really 2015. Can someone help me clarify that? Councillor Davey?
The intention would be that staff continue as in the report starting in 2015, so no change to the 2014 budget.
So you're actually, your motion then is simply to commit it for 2015 with no effect on this year's budget?
Correct.
Okay. Going back to the list, Councillor Verbanovich.
Well, I guess that provides a little bit of clarification. My only concern, I guess, is part of it, and maybe staff can just answer this question before I make my comments, because I am very supportive of where Councillor Davies going with this, is how 2014 will be dealt with then, because at the end of the day, all the other municipalities are in, and the work is starting. And I know this is a concern for the partnership that exists in the region on this.
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff had conversations as late as this morning with the organization. I think there's an agreement that whether or not we provide funding this year, we're an important partner at the table, and as a result, I have confidence that we'll be an active member of this partnership through 2014. There may be some decisions made specifically around the hiring of the individual for which we will not have input because we are not at this point funding the salary, but I had and staff had a significant level of confidence that our partnership goes beyond just this one contribution and that we can continue to work together.
Okay. In light of that, and I'm encouraged by those comments by you, Mr. May, I will certainly be supporting the motion that's before us, and I'm pleased that...
Which one?
Councillor Davies...
Okay, the amendment.
Sorry, the amendment. And I'm pleased that Councillor Davey has brought this forward. Without a doubt, our residents have made it clear that the environment and climate action are issues of significant concern to them, and they believe this is something that we should be investing in. I can't see a scenario, quite frankly, where in this partnership, we're in a family called the Region with 7 municipalities in the regional government, and private sector and not-for-profit partners that are trying to make this happen. I can't envision a scenario where, quite frankly, we wouldn't support this. So at the end of the day, the money has to come from something. I think Councillor Davey has identified a source where that's going to happen, and I would hope that all of us support this and send a very clear message about how important this is and the fact that we need to ensure that we continue to work with our other partners within the region to make this a successful initiative.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you very much. And I'm confused. I really appreciate Councillor Davey bringing this forward, and I'm confused as to why we're not funding it in this year. And so therefore I would make an amendment that we do fund it this year as well. We're a major partner in this region, and I think that we should contribute towards it. I don't see why we wouldn't. Either we're in or we're out, and we do believe in this. So it's $25,000. It's a symbolic amount, really, considering our budget, and it does demonstrate that we're fully committed to this process. So I will support Councillor Davey, and I would also do an amendment that we would support $25,000 for the year 2014.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? 2014, Councillor Gazzola. Funding to come from?
As a budget variance.
Okay. Thought you were going to say that. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I can support Councillor Davies' motion because he comes up with a plan of where we're going to fund the project. As I said in committee, I don't believe, after spending hours and hours on a budget, that we should, again, be asking just to overspend a budget. With the Glockenspiel project that was previously mentioned, again, source of funding was identified for that project. That's the difference. When we have a source of funding for a project, I can support these types of initiatives. However, again, I have no problem supporting staff recommendation, Councillor Davies' recommendation, because I think we need to move forward. But to set a precedent to continue to talk about, as we did with grants and as we're doing here, to just keep spending money and putting them as budget variance, I have concerns, because we turned down a lot of strategic initiatives through our budget process because we couldn't afford it. I could support Councillor Glenn Graham if he comes up with a different way of funding it, to fund it this year. But if not, then I can't, but I will support Councillor Davies' motion.
Councillor Verbanovich.
Well, I'm wondering if I can just ask one question of staff, and I know this isn't probably a good normal practice, but I do recall that on occasion we have had to do that before, if I remember correctly. Is there a mechanism, particularly because we're talking about using capital dollars, where we can expend it, quite frankly, this year, but it actually gets funded out of next year dollars, so it's basically an early expense, and I guess there'd be some carrying costs associated with it?
But you have to remember this was an annual fee. It's not just a one-time.
No, I understand that, but I think that the point being that what Councillor Davies is suggesting is it would come out of the remaining capital dollars, and so we would just simply start in 2014 if that's okay from an accounting point of view.
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, Councillor Verbanovich is right. There have been times when on a multi-year project, the cash flow has not exactly matched the budget timing, but in all cases, there was a very clear commitment from Council to that funding commitment over time. So I would say that it's unusual, but it is possible. The only point I would make is that there wouldn't be sufficient funding under that scenario to take us out to 2021. We would be slightly short. So you would be accepting that you'd start early, but you would not have full funding today to necessarily see it through to the end of 2021. It would essentially mean part-year funding in that year. But that's well down the road. Although I think it was Councillor Davies' intention to fully fund that 6-year commitment, and there is funding available to do that. Okay, so the short answer is yes, we could do what you're asking. Notionally, it would not provide full funding out to the end of 2021.
So we would essentially need to find the 2021 year in future capital budgets.
If at that point you're committed to the end of the 2021 timeframe, yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay. There was an amendment. There are two amendments here, in essence. The first one is to amend the 2015 budget expenditure to 2014. That's been moved by Councillor Glenn Graham and seconded by Councillor Gazzola. Deal with that portion only. Oh, Councillor Glenn Graham?
Yeah, I guess that's where Councillor Verbanovich is going, so I'll defer to him since you brought it up.
Councillor Verbanovich?
Can I, so I guess my amendment to the amendment would be that in lieu of, instead of a budget overage, that we simply charge it against the account that Councillor Davies identified, beginning in 2014.
Beginning in 2014. I would suggest that supersedes it accomplishes what you're after, so we're not dealing with amendments to it. We can only have one amendment, actually, in any event. So we'll deal with that it's 2014. The amendment would be 2014 to be funded from the source that Councillor Davey had indicated, recognizing the point that Mr. Chapman had said. Okay, so that's the first, the amendment. And then we'll go back and deal with the approval process. This is not just dealing with the approvals, just changing that year-end source. Those in favor? Though recorded vote's been called for. You're voting on changing the essence is to begin the funding in 2014, funding to come from the source that Councillor Davey had mentioned, recognizing that it will not take us to 2021. I know that it will seem redundant that we go back to all of the other wording, which is effectively doing the same thing, but from a procedural standpoint, we've got to do that. So, on that portion only, those in favor? Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, the effect of that is the amendment is that it be approved as we have just dealt with. Record a vote on this, I presume. We were just taking the amendment of the year and the source of funding. I know it sounds silly, but because we hadn't dealt with all of the wording in the rest of the motion, it essentially is the same thing. Yes. Okay. You have to follow the bouncing ball. Those in favor? Or, I'm sorry, we now vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There is a subtlety in someone can be, as one was there, opposed to the 2014, but if that carries, ultimately changing, and that. Councillor Fernandez, you have an item on number 2.
Yes, that's correct. In looking at the balance of the federal gas reserve, which is item number 2, of $596,572, notwithstanding that we received an email from Barbara Robinson, there was discussion last week about using some of that funding for assisting in the replacement of trees for the EAB affected wards. Definitely want it to be understood that this is nothing to do with an election. It is basically listening to what our constituents are saying to us. I want to see some of this money used in partnership with what our residents have been asking us to partner with them to replace the trees. I'm going to put forward $200,000. Not exactly sure where that will bring us, but it still leaves $396,572 for the road reconstruction and resurfacing that was identified by engineering. This is not to say that I don't respect the concerns that engineering has brought forward with regard to some of our road surfacing, and that's why I wanted to make sure I left a substantial amount of money in the budget for those initiatives. This was a reserve fund, and so it's not that it was found money specifically, but it was money that was available to us. I understand from the email as well that Mr. Chapman said that we can facilitate the funding scenario.
That's been moved by Councillor Fernandez, seconded by Councillor Singh. Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I can't remember if I spoke about this with Mr. Chapman or with our city engineer, with Barbara Robinson on this. And I recognize that her position is very strong on that this investment should be going to roads. But the suggestion was made, and maybe Ms. Houston, you can even add some clarity to this. But the point was made that if we're inclined to go in this direction, the suggestion was that perhaps we leave this issue until committee next week, because I believe there's a report coming back on the Emerald Ash Borer, and the thinking was that we should look at it in the context. So Mr. Chapman's kind of looking surprised. I think maybe the suggestion was made that we should look at it in the overall context of the report if we're going to go down in this direction potentially.
Ms. Houston.
Thank you, Mayor Zara. That's exactly right. We would recommend that if council does want to consider deferring or allocating any of this funding towards EAB, that you listen to or you decide that in the context of next week's report.
And if we did that, would it impact in any way in terms of these additional road resurfacing projects? In other words, if we did defer it until that, so that we're looking at it in the big picture, would it still allow us to move in a timely manner with these other projects? Because assuming you know, I mean, even Councillor Fernandez's proposal is still going to see a chunk of the money go towards roads projects.
Obviously, the sooner you make that decision, the better, but I think staff's feeling is that if you make that decision next week, we can still proceed with the resurfacing in whatever quantity you decide.
Okay.
So that if it was dealt with next week at committee, it may not get ratified then until May the 26th. Does your answer still hold in terms of any effect on the contracts?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay.
Okay, so in that regards, Mr. Mayor, I would, and I'll be clear, I mean, I am supportive of allocating some of these dollars towards the EAB. I don't know what the right amount is, but I would suggest that I'd be prepared to move a deferral so that to committee, but maybe I'll hold that in case there's other questions or comments first.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, and I'm glad that Councillor Fernandez put this forward. I think this is an opportunity that we have new fund money that we did not expect, and if you can try to appropriately affect both much-needed areas, that would be benefit, I think, citywide. But I appreciate what Councillor Brvenovich is saying, that we need to look at this in entirety with what the staff report will come back, and I'm comfortable. Obviously, I would love for the allocation to be today and now, but I realize that we have to look at the entire picture, and I would be comfortable waiting till next week.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, it's hard to make comments without knowing what the EAB picture is like, but at this point in time, in my mind, we're controlling the ash borer problem, and as far as I'm concerned, we've had a terrible, terrible winter. Our roads are in terrible shape, and we need to spend this money on our roads and not be allocating parts of it to the emerald ash borer. We normally spend in the neighborhood of $3 million for road upkeep like this, but because of that the Margaret Ave Bridge came falling down, we cut that. We cut $1.25 million out of that figure, so that in what's one of the most terrible years that we've ever suffered around here with potholes, we're cutting our figure down that we would spend on it in the summer from $3 million down to about $1 million, $1.8 million. So this isn't the time to take money out of that account and put it for the emerald ash borer. I from what I can see, we're dealing with that other problem. I know that a lot of people would like to have it all nice and clean and all the stumps taken out and all of that. I think the important thing that we decided a few years ago when we got into this, that we would deal with safety issues, and where trees had to come down for safety issues, we dealt with that and we did that. So now, and I think we're living with that. So right now, one of my major number one priorities would be the potholes in our road. So I'd like to see us spend a normal $2.9 million allotment. Really, this year, that allotment should be increased because of the winter we have just gone through.
Councillor Fernandez.
Just a quick question to staff. I had asked a few weeks back about the infrared paving operations. And my understanding is when I looked at that budget paper, there was, and I apologize, I left it in my office, I meant to bring it with me, that there was a budgetary implication to that. And I'm wondering if the funding for, if we were able to take some of this funding and make that program work better, if we may be able to get more bang for our buck, so to speak. I don't know if I'm starting to muddy the waters here, and I don't intend to do that.
Ms. Houston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I don't have a copy of that issue paper in front of me, but I recall Mr. Whitmer's email on that, and he mentioned that it doesn't work for certain times of year, and you have to use it for certain times of year, for one thing. But in terms of the issue paper, that's operating funding versus capital funding. So if we were to allocate some of this funding towards that, that only would deal with a single year operation.
Okay.
Or for, I forget what the numbers are in it, but it could be potentially a couple of years, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just kind of musing around that maybe that would be a possibility to make that possible, because my understanding is now we would be in the right time of year because it's warmer. It's only when it's very cold that wasn't going to be working, and now we're in better temperatures. That, like I said, I was just kind of musing to see if there would be a better use of some of that money. Okay, that was the question.
Okay, one more, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. I can appreciate where Councillor Fernandez is coming from on that, and I know that's been a big issue, but due to the severity of the winter storms that we've had, and I've noticed that this year in terms of going from point A to point B, there's more potholes and the conditions of the roads are much more in poor condition than they have been in previous years. So, and having, as Councillor Gazzola pointed out, some of the money being allocated to the Margaret Avenue Bridge, I'm not prepared to support this. I think we've got to spend more, and I know staff have always argued that we are getting behind in terms of road resurfacing and maintenance, that any more money that's going to be depleted from that road surfacing work will just unfortunately put us further behind.
Just a quick comment from me. I'll give more comments when it comes back to committee, but I believe that we are fundamentally changing the purpose of the gas tax reserve funding, and for many of the same reasons that Councillor Gazzola spoke of, at this point in time, it looks like I would not be able to support the transfer, particularly because we have used those funds for Margaret Avenue Bridge. Motion for deferral is moved by Councillor Urbanovich, seconded by Councillor Fernandez, and this is to defer it to discussion on May the 12th at Community and Infrastructure Services Committee.
Did you call the vote?
I haven't yet. So I'm calling the vote now, sorry. That's what you were voting for. Sorry. Those in favor then? Those opposed? The motion carries. Deferral until next week. So the balance of the report, that's items 3 through 6. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And Councillor Davey, the Finance and Corporate Services Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Urbanovich that the remaining items, which are items number 1, 3, and 4, be approved. And sorry, I would also point out that we will need an amendment for item number 3, the natural gas purchasing policy, because that date should be June 9th as opposed to May 12th, as received in email.
That's correct. There was a separate email that we received on Wednesday about that. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For item number 4, I had declared a conflict of interest as my parents own property near that site, so it would be prudent for me to recuse myself of discussion.
Okay. We'll take that one separately. We weren't in the chamber when we took conflicts at the beginning of the meeting. Councillor Gazzola?
I want to take number 3 separately.
All right. So, taking item 4 for where the conflict has been declared. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Taking item 1 then. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And item 3, effectively we're taking them each separately because of those variations. Those in favor? Let me see some hands. Those in favor? Well, he doesn't have his button on. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I did want to speak, or I thought other people would want to speak too. I'm not sure what this we're approving actually does. and I'm opposed if it's staying somewhat near where we currently are on our purchasing, and I'm opposed to that. I'm strictly in favor of going to a pure market process, the same as I questioned tonight of our electricity division company who deal in a straight market approach. So I will not support this recommendation number 3, and I'd like a recorded vote on it.
That's quite all right. The motion, as I understand it, is it's directing staff to update the purchasing policy to reflect that, and it will come back at a future time in terms of rates and so on. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll comment as well. I'll be brief because I think I have a sense where council's going on this. I am going in a different direction as well. I'm going to be voting against the motion because I think the real solution here is to offer gas customers choice, and as we heard in committee, if the City of Kitchener doesn't offer the variable rate option, then no Kitchener customers will be able to take advantage of a variable rate option if that is their preference, because there isn't a business case to be made for variable. There's only a business case to be made for some form of fixed, or as some refer to as stable. So my preference would be that we move to a variable rate model exclusively as well with Kitchener Utilities, and that we work with the private sector as opposed to shunning them in the past as we have, and sometimes for good reason, to offer fixed models so that the consumer has some choice. And as its final note too, this would have no impact on the budgets of the City of Kitchener.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that we went out with extensive public consultation, and it came back pretty loud and clear that the public wants stability and that they want more of a fixed rate model. I think with this approach, it's taking us from what we currently do and moves us in a direction that we have the ability to be a little bit more flexible and play the market a little bit more. I think the public will be okay with that option, but clearly they have stated that they do not want to go to a completely variable rate. And so I cannot completely negate what the public has said, but I'm willing to move towards an approach that can see both sides be a little bit happier. It's a little bit of a compromise on both sides. We'll see a little bit lower of our fixed purchasing and a little bit higher of our market purchasing. And I think at the end of the day, we will gain that stability for our customers.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. And I think some of us have gone through this with a very one-directional point of view on this. I'll be very forthcoming with what my perspective was when this became before us. I was leaning towards and comfortable with a spot rate purchasing. I still am. I still think that's maybe a preferred route, because I think we have access to market rates, in which case we can utilize and take advantage when the rates are low. But at the same time, we did give this decision to our customers. And although my feelings are different, I have to be responsible to what the question that we asked them, and that question, the answer to that question was very firm and very clear, that there is a sense of stability that is required and asked for in our fee setting. And I think looking at the time frames for the hedging aspect of still purchasing policy, looking at a short time frame of 1 year gives a very close approach to spot rate purchasing, but at the same time giving that stability that our customers are asking for. And I think we're just asking for options at this point, and that option is still available if you wanted to go spot rate when this report would come back. So I would support what the motion is before us, to look at a complete picture to see what all those options would mean, and then make a decision at that point.
Councillor Urbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supporting the motion that's before us. I think it's incumbent on us to remember that, as Councillor Galloway-Seelock identified, we did go through a comprehensive public consultation on this, and through that process, both the folks who participated as part of a telephone survey and those who self-identified and responded, that the majority of those people indicated that they prefer to see us continue with some degree of a stable system. I think, as Councillor Singh identified, we're going to explore a number of alternatives to try to tweak that a little bit. And I think at that time we'll make the decisions that are necessary to go forward with this.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, I will be supporting the recommendation as well. It was stated very clearly 74% preferred stable rates, and I'm not sure why we would question not what our residents want when we didn't question them when they were opposed to the casino or the statue project, where they were both overwhelmingly in favor of whatever or opposed to whatever those. We accepted those quite handedly. So I will support this because this is what the public was asking for.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you very much. The reason that I'm changing my vote and not supporting this week is because I don't believe the public did appreciate the fact that there's a $100 a year premium for stable rates. I don't think that was clearly explained to them. And I have given a lot of thought, but I do think that there's an opportunity for variable rates. And to Councillor Davies' point, that if people wish to pursue stable rates, they still have that option. So I will not support the recommendation tonight.
Councillor Singh?
Yes, I'm not saying you're incorrect because I had heard a different number, so I just wanted a little bit more clarity. Councillor Glenn Graham.
I believe it was $55 per month over that period of time.
So it's $55
per year.
$55 annual premium for stability rates over a market rates,
long-term period.
not the 100. Okay, so.
The schedules that we received, the schedules we received last week from 1998 to 2013 on average had a $55 difference. And for clarification, there was also a reference made to a 25 cents per day. That was for a much shorter period. It is actually 15, and that has been verified by Ms. Houston with our staff. Another point of order, Councillor Gazzola.
No, I have the figures here if we're going by them, and I take it the figures cover for a period of about
13 years.
And the figure was, and you have to include HST because that doesn't go away. The figure is $969.77. So
over the 16-year period. Yeah. And therefore it came to
it's more than
it came to $55 pre-tax.
Well, pre.
So
that's if you don't have to pay tax. And that's if you look at the 15-year period. If you look at the last 5 years, you get a much different picture.
That's correct. And you can, if you look at 1 year, it's different still.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's
yes.
Thank
Councillor Davies.
Sorry, just double checking with staff now. Is that number comparison of our rates to the spot rates, or is that a comparison of our rates to union?
But Ms. Houston.
That is correct. It's a comparison of our rates to union's rates.
And isn't it true that union, a large portion of that union, and again, it goes both ways, but a large portion of that union wasn't at spot rates. So we're not really comparing us to spot. We're comparing us to half of spot and half of union's rate pre-2008 or something like that.
That's correct. Union Gas did change their methodology.
Okay. And to be fair, the flip side of this equation too, just to be absolutely clear, is you can't really go by spot rates since 2008 either, because clearly there was a massive market turmoil that changed it. So what you should be taking away from this primarily is that yes, fixed in the long run will most likely have a cost associated to it, but that cost is entirely unpredictable and you can't determine it.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Although this is not statistically significant, I did click this out of the Kitchener Post this week, and the question of their online poll was, are you willing to pay a premium for stable natural gas rates? And 58% said no, the premium is too high. Yes, it was 31% said, I want to know what I'm paying, which is again a little bit different than what we were hearing on our survey. The other concern I have is where we are on the rails. And I guess my question is, if we were going to discuss this on June the 9th, why we're doing such an in-depth discussion at this point in time. Would it not have been more appropriate to have done that discussion on June the 9th?
I would have gladly have had that, but I sometimes get chastised for not allowing councillors to make their comments, and so I let them go.
All right, that's my comment, although I did vote against the original motion. I will still be doing that.
I really do not want to go around the horseshoe again. I've got Councillor Singh in the list, but you've already spoken twice on this matter.
I had requested.
I'll clarify a point, but then I would like to make my point, and then we will vote on this.
Absolutely. Are we making the decision today, or this report will come back, as I assumed, based on the motion here in June? At that point, we will make a final decision.
This report will come back. What I should have done is taken Councillor Urbanovich's deferral motion, which would have cut off all of the discussion, and we wouldn't have to go through it again. That's my point. You were going to, weren't you?
No.
All right. It's a long night, you're right. My comments are that I find it fascinating, and that's the word I guess I should use. I find it fascinating that you can choose to pick and choose when you want to accept a professional survey or a professional survey, and put your trust and faith in a self-identified, unsolicited survey, which was the statue one, which was the poll that you just referenced there. These are self-identified, and they're not necessarily a cross-section of the community at all. And so you were able to support the unprofessional surveys, but when it suits you, you go the opposite way. I just find that fascinating, and I'll leave it at that. I will be voting in favor of this because it still allows us the chance to take a look at all alternatives. It's asking for an update of information. Recorded vote's been called for. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Urbanovic, the Planning and Strategic Initiatives reports are two.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Galloway Seelock, and I guess I'll deal with the first special meeting of Planning and Strategic Initiatives report first.
Okay. It's there. Speaking to the first report.
It's about development charges.
Okay. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I ask that on this report that we deal with the second paragraph separately. I didn't support it in committee, and I will not support it again, as it sets out the capital forecast, and I'm not in agreement with the capital forecast, because a lot of these, I'll keep it brief, just simply because a lot of the Southwest facilities have been pushed out in timing, and I don't agree with that, even though I have asked staff to bring back a report to ask for those, to look at speeding up the timing for those facilities.
Councillor Singh.
Yes. Just an item number 4, Mr. Mayor, because I wasn't present at the onset of the meeting. For the same property I mentioned before that my parents own, so it would have a similar conflict for this item as well.
That's the second report. That would be the second report.
That would be the second report?
I'm just dealing with the
DC
development charges, the first PSI report.
Okay.
So just the DCs, yeah, you're confusing me a little. Okay. Councillor Ioannidis.
No, mine was along similar lines as Councillor Singh.
Okay, just dealing with the DCs. It's item number 1. Councillor Gazzola.
I would like a recorded vote because I think it's an important issue that we deal with every 4 years. We should be recorded as to how we vote.
Yeah. My comment is that we are at the point where we must get this through, obviously, and I think that there were parts probably that some of us will not like, but on balance, we have to continue to get through this development charges bylaw by the end of May, or we're not in a position to collect those fees. And so I would ask people to take the broad perspective on this. The recorded vote has been called for, and we... Sorry, we're going to deal on the second paragraph alone, taking that one separately. Okay. Second paragraph of the first item, the DC motion. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Not on the capital, because we just dealt with that.
Village, then?
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I just want to say, because Mayor Zare, you mentioned that we should look at the big picture. I've sat around this horseshoe for 8 years, and have constantly looked at the big picture, and it's gotten the Southwest Complex nowhere but further behind. And so that's why this year I've decided that I can't support the capital forecast, but I can support the rest of the DCs. So I don't appreciate being asked to look at the big picture when I've done that for the last 8 years. It's time that we actually do something to focus on the Southwest and the needs of that community as well, not just the city as a whole, because DCs continue to come in from the Southwest and they're getting nothing.
Fair enough. The balance of the DC motion?
So it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
No, we haven't. We just took the second paragraph. We haven't taken
the balance
of the
of that
DC
one. Sorry.
motion.
My apologies. I'm jumping ahead.
We're waiting for vote. Those in favor? Yes. Those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Now we'll move to the second report. Councillor Babich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'll move by myself, second by Councillor Galloway-Seelock, items 1 to 4 on the report. And I can just briefly comment on the last item, number 4, which is with respect to the planning around the station plans for the region's LRT project. I will be supporting this. I think it's important that we do this and that we do it right. As we know, infill projects tend to be one of the most controversial planning applications we deal with in our community. And as we move forward with the redevelopment that's likely going to be spurred on by the LRT, we want to make sure that we have a process in place that will both allow for significant levels of citizen engagement and make sure that the kind of planning that's done is truly going to build the type of community we want to see for the next 50 years and beyond. We'll notice that staff in the original report suggested that the costs could range with approach 3 between $30,000 and $60,000. And what's being proposed here is a cap at $30,000 with a review after the first station plan is completed to see what's been learned and what can be tweaked to potentially reduce that budget even further in the future.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I don't need to comment, and it doesn't have to be recorded, but I would like to vote on item number 4 separately.
Take number 4 separately? Yeah, it will be because of the conflicts there. Recording. Councillor Fernandez.
That's essentially what I was going to ask, but notwithstanding some of Councillor Urbanovik's comments about the fact that it's being capped at $30,000, I still find that that's a significant amount of money to be paying out on consultant fees. I think there is some work that could be done in-house. So I'm glad it's being taken separately.
Okay. Items 1 through 3 we will deal with first. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're dealing with number 4. Conflicts have been noted by Councillor Singh and Councillor Ioannidis. A recorded vote has been called for. Are there any particular sections that want to be pulled out, or we're just dealing with the whole item? Whole item, I guess? Okay. So prepare for the vote. You may now vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Is there any unfinished business or questions, answers? We'll deal with those in the same way. Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And further to an email that was received relating to Bright Up and Aaron's and the rail crossings there, I have 2 questions of staff. There's some asphalt pavement that actually is interfering with the rail movement along that section, and I was wondering if it's possible for one of our road crews to come out and take a look, because the actual asphalt is higher than it should be, and it's actually touching the rail, in addition to the so it's actually hitting the it's being depressed by the rail car. And the other issue is the issue of emergency numbers that's incorrect on the posted sign. It lists CN numbers, and I was wondering if a member of senior management could indicate if someone will address this to get the correct emergency numbers posted.
Mr. May.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as soon as we received the email that Councillor Glenn Graham is referring to, the fire chief was in touch with both the region and the rail line. They really are the most appropriate and able to respond to these issues. And we're going to keep in constant contact with them, but really we don't have the expertise to fully respond to this. We can send out a roads crew to look at what you're referring to, although again, I really do believe we need to leave it to the experts who know safety and know the rail lines to make these decisions. In terms of the phone number, happy to pass that along, but again, it really should be the region taking the lead on this, but we're happy to continue to keep it on their radar.
I think the point that Councillor Glenn Graham is bringing forward, though, that this is, if I read the email correctly, and I did read it hurriedly, that there was some correction that was made, but it wasn't quite done properly in the last days or so, in part of this response. And so that's the thing we need to check. I may be wrong on that timing, but you're absolutely correct. Others are taking the lead on this. But if our crews are doing some work, then we just need to make sure that it is followed through.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any work that our road crews have done in that area in, say, the last 48 hours. But we're happy to go back and take a look at that, and if that's the case, we'll be on top of it.
I may stand corrected. I'll check that email after this meeting again and forward it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, there are no other questions. It's been moved by Councillor Councillor Urbanovich.
Just new business?
Yeah, we've been on this for a bit.
Thanks. Just very quickly, Council will know that as a group, we've been involved in the past in various initiatives involving the food bank, including the fall event, and now in the spring, they're going to have their Dig In initiative on May the 23rd. Our colleagues up in the city of Waterloo are getting engaged as well. and the food bank is looking to raise a fair amount of food in their spring food drive to help distribute 26,500 pounds of food each week that they do as part of their network. So they're hoping that we as a group are going to get involved. I'll have an email and a flyer I'll be sending out to members of council. But between now and the 23rd, they're hoping that we might target in our wards the collection of some canned vegetables, canned fruits, peanut butter, and other staple items that they're going after. So hopefully we can help them out as we have in the past. And the only other item that I'll just bring some attention to, we know that KW or Kitchener is the recipient of the world's longest picnic. A number of organizations working for Rotary Charities are trying again this year to have the world's biggest bake sale on May the 31st at Boardwalk. And last year, I understand we were 400 items short from making the record, so they're trying again between 10 and 6 on the 31st. 13,000 was raised for community charities, and hopefully the community can respond in a favorable way at the end of May and see us hold 2 world records in our community in the future.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola, seconded by Councillor Glenn Graham, that the bylaws be given a first reading, but there is an additional late starter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 3 late starter bylaws, 2 zone changes, 1 dealing with Fisher-Holman Road and 1 dealing with Highland Road West, and a part law control exemption concerning Max Becker Drive.
Okay, those in favor, first reading? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Verbanovich that the council be resolved into committee of the whole. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Can someone move second reading of the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Davey. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We've dealt with the tender reports. Somebody want to move item 2? Moved by Councillor Galloway-Sealock. Any discussion? Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Sorry, I just need to find my page. I know that there was a lot of discussion about the nominating committee, and I had sent in a nomination from a resident in my ward. I'm just puzzled about the fact that we're only choosing, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's better if I say, are we only choosing members from boards to sit on the nominating committee, or are we also allowing an open door? Because on page 2-2, it talks about that the makeup of the committee would not include community members. It said it should be noted that some concern was expressed by those contacted with having community groups and organization make up the committee instead of community members.
Tarling?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to Council's direction concerning this particular item, it was Council's direction for us to look at community-based organizations, such as the ones that were put forward in this report. And the individual that was put forward does not belong to a community-based organization as contemplated by the directive.
Okay, I guess that wasn't my understanding. I apologize. I thought that we were looking at community groups in addition to community members, so that we would have a broader spectrum of people who would be sitting on that nominating committee. So would that require definitely not at this time, and how, let me just ask the question and go back. How long will these committee members be sitting on the nominating committee?
The term is for the next 2 years, 2014 to 2016. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to point out that the gentleman that was put forward is a current sitting member of an advisory committee, which does preclude him from sitting on the nominating committee as well.
Okay. are we talking about the same person as Tarling? I just want to make sure that it's, maybe we should have this offline, but I just want to make sure that because it was identified in the report that there was some concern expressed, and I was concerned that I think we need to have a broader range. People who are in community groups and organizations give an awful lot of their time already, and not to say that they won't make great nominating committee members, but I really do feel that we should be opening the door to a broader range of community members. So I'll have the conversation with you offline about this particular situation. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move on to item 3, water main break repairs. Moved by Councillor Gazzola. Are you moving or are you asking a question?
I will move it, yes.
Okay.
And I have a question.
Go ahead.
My question is to staff as to, in the future, can we not call for tenders at the beginning of the year for that very purpose, and therefore get a different bid as to who would get the business if we can't do it, like we do with some other projects?
Ms. Houston.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're actually looking at that. We're going to develop a roster, and it's probably going to be across the region for exactly that purpose.
Okay, fine.
Okay, any further discussion? No? All those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried. Item number 4, moved by Councillor Glenn Graham. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item 5, sign variance, moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 6, dangerous dog designation appeal, moved by Councillor Davey. Councillor Gazzola, did you have a question or? Oh, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 7, moved by Councillor Glenn Graham.
I actually have a question, but I'd be happy to move it, but I want to make an amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to amend item number 3 in this because it talks about stop serving alcohol by 12:01 daily. I'd like to amend that to 2 a.m. daily. And the reason for that is that I don't believe that there's any need to have that as a standard approach in the downtown. We're well past the days where we have to assume the worst, and I think that I've seen firsthand the impact on a business when it's restricted to serve alcohol by 12 o'clock. It really damages the business, and just when it's trying to get its legs underneath it, it finds that it's very precarious. So I would like to assume the best and give them a chance to demonstrate that they are good corporate citizens, and that if they do have issues, that we can always try and address it later. But that's my amendment, to stop serving alcohol by 2 a.m. daily on that item.
Any other questions? Councillor Gazzola, and then I have one.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but that's what I wanted to bring up, exactly the same point, because I think when a business is starting out, and I saw an example of this just down the street, that I don't think they're any longer in business, but they had to struggle with that closing at midnight. I think in their first year of business, they need all the support they can get. And if I'm not wrong, we do have an opportunity, if they should not pan out, we do have an opportunity to deal with that. Is that not right? I could ask staff.
Maybe Mr. Chapman can comment on that. Someone needs to turn off.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the councillor is correct. We can always pursue enforcement that's retroactive, not proactive. And I wouldn't diminish at all the intention of Councillor Glenn Graham, except to point out in this case, it would simply be a principal decision. It would not have any impact on the applicant, given they've indicated their latest hours of closing on a Friday night will be 10:30 p.m. But still, there may be merit in doing this just to send a signal, although it won't have a direct impact.
Okay, is that it, Councillor Gazzola? So the only question I would have of staff is, I mean, this was originally put in place, if I remember the history of it, and Ms. McDonald can maybe help me with this. It was put in place as part of a series of conditions and a process that was put in place for businesses because it was our way of dealing with the AGCO on liquor license applications. And the problem, as I recall, was it's very difficult for us to deal retroactively with the AGCO when problems arise. And so the solution was to look at something like this for year one, and that condition has been waived in the past when the operator has had experience and so on. Is that the way we still approach it? And is that the rationale behind why it was originally there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that is the approach that was taken by staff in the past. I have not had any discussion as to ongoing intent. I can only assume that they're following the same protocol that they've been following. I know that we didn't always impose this time frame. That was it started with I think a local restaurant downtown, and then I think it flowed thereafter with new establishments. But it wasn't always the time restriction that was imposed.
Okay, I'm certainly. I'm willing to support this evening, but I think one of the things we may want to do is look at it's been a long time since this whole process has been reviewed, and maybe it's appropriate for staff to take a look at it and bring a report back. Mr. Bloom, any thoughts on that as our downtown guru?
Through Mr. Mayor, ironically, as late as I think Friday, we got correspondence from the AGCO that they want to change the way in which they interact with us on this very issue. So we will have to review it now anyway. So I suspect we'll come back to you with a report fairly soon.
Okay, so Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Sorry. I would just be concerned with changing it on this one because I don't know how many other businesses we've opened in the downtown in the last year, because I believe that restriction's for a year, that have those regulations, and then they're going to come back and want the same regulations as we're giving here. So that would be my concern, is that there's other people who have this regulation that have opened their business, and they've got the 12 o'clock rule on their business.
Mr. Bloom, any recollections of that, or?
Through the chair, I can't recall any. Try my best to rack my brains, but I don't think there are any liquor licenses that have been issued within the last year that would still have this condition imposed on them. I believe most of them have gone past their 1-year position or are now out of business.
Good. Mayor Zaire?
I would, particularly in light of the closure that they have announced, and I was just over there actually picking up a card today, and that they're closing much earlier than that, I would stick with the original recommendation. And I'm not sure that Councillor Glenn Graham brought that forward, that he was thinking of that particularly, so it would probably be good to stick with the original motion, but I'd leave it with Council.
Okay. That's fine. So you're moving it, but with the change. Okay. So are folks asking that number 3 be dealt with separately? Okay. So all those in favor of number 3 being at 2 a.m. Okay. All those opposed? Motion's carried. The balance of number 7. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 8, 290 King Street East, moved by Councillor Yanetsky. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, I understand there's one additional late starter. Somebody want to move it?
I'll move it.
Moved by the Mayor.
It's moved that the 9,000 serious wage schedule and instructor grid be approved, be in compliance with the change in minimum wage legislation and obligations under pay equity.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Move that the committee rise and... Actually, no, you do that, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
You have to read that.
Well, I will, but you have to do the committee rise and report first, no? Okay, sorry. I'll move that the proceedings in the recorded pecuniary interest and conflicts taken in the meeting of the committee of the whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's moved by Councillor Gazzola, seconded by Councillor Glenn Graham, that the bylaws be given 3rd reading. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. and it's been moved by Councillor Davey that we adjourn.